Chapter 275. Congratulations. When Situ Xingchen heard this, it was as if she had been slapped harshly. Even if Chu Luiwei replaced me in the competition and let me get first place, everyone could clearly see that Chu Luiwei was the one who refined the fourth-grade pill. Everyone had personally witnessed Chu Luiwei's extraordinary talent and shocking abilities. At this point, Situ Xingchen finally realized something. The higher the grade of the pill Chu Luiwei refined and the better the ranking, the greater the humiliation he brought to me. After the Qingjiao competition, everyone would know that I, Situ Xingchen, could only get first place in the Celestial Physician competition because Chu Luiwei was outstanding enough. By then, everyone's focus would be on Chu Luiwei. Who would care about me? All the fame and glory would belong to Chu Luiwei in the end. What am I? I'm just a pitiful and lamentable accessory. Chu Luiwei gave me first place, but at the same time, he gave me a huge humiliation. Situ Xingchen was so regretful that her intestines turned green. Her face was red and white, and she wanted to disappear from this place immediately. Elder Feng Yi surveyed the surroundings. I hereby announce that the first place in this year's Qingjiao competition for the Celestial Physician competition is Tai Yen Academy's Situ Xingchen. When his low and powerful voice landed, the huge square fell into an eerie silence. Especially the people from Tai Yen Academy, their expressions were indescribable. Eldest Princess Situ, you don't seem to be very happy. Chu Luiwei blinked and asked. I vaguely heard you say that you wanted to cancel the agreement between us. But is my compensation not enough? Situ Xingchen's body trembled slightly. You're asking the obvious. Chu Luiwei clearly did it on purpose. She clenched her teeth and forced a smile, but there was no smile in her eyes. And no, Chu Luiwei helped me get first place. How can I say that it's not enough? But she would rather not have this first place now. Elder Feng Yi cupped his hands towards Cheng Han and chuckled. Dean Cheng Han, congratulations. Cheng Han felt like he was about to vomit blood. Before this, he had never thought that he would actually obtain first place in the warrior tournament in such a manner. But now, when he heard the word, congratulations, he felt that it would be better if he didn't have a ranking. In the end, Chu Luiwei was the one who took first place. For so many years, he had never encountered such an aggrieved and speechless matter. Sun Zhongyan looked at Ji Zixing and patted him on the shoulder. Zixing, you performed very well this time. Although you didn't help our academy get first place, but strength is respect, and you have to admit defeat. Am I right? Ji Zixing replied, Thank you, elder son, for your guidance. This student will remember it well. Cheng Han clenched his fists. Sun Zhongyan was making oblique accusations. Every word was filled with mockery. However, he had no way to refute it. Zuorong, Xian and the others looked at each other with complicated expressions. After a while, Zuorong could not help but hold his forehead and mutter to himself. I knew that this girl was indeed hiding her true abilities. Previously, she probably acted so clumsy on purpose. To think that they thought that she was really not good at alchemy. Xian was even more embarrassed. At that time, he was the one who looked down on Chu Luiwei the most. He did not expect that, after keeping silent for a while, he said, no wonder the dean was willing to accept her as a disciple. There was probably no other person with such talent in the entire country Yaochen, right? Zuorong quickly got over it and clapped his hands. Hee, why are you thinking so much? That girl was hiding her abilities on purpose previously. Not only us, but so many people also did not see through it, right? TSK, I heard that Lu Yu caused a lot of trouble for the Chu family. Now, it seems like it was nothing. When the news of the Qingjiao competition spreads, TSK. Previously, when Chu Luiwei entered Tianlu Academy, the Chu family might have regretted it, but it was not to the extent of heartache. After all, the Chu family still had Chu Xianmin, who was considered one of the best in the academy. However, it was different now. In the Qingjiao competition, Chu Luiwei took first place in both the warrior and Xian master categories. Strictly speaking, she was also first in the celestial physician category. Even in the entire history of country Yaochen, such a genius had never appeared before. Even if one used their toes to think, they would know what Chu Luiwei's current talent meant. As long as there were no accidents, she would definitely be a top-notch warrior with a bright future. That would be a fatal blow to the Chu family. The 3 rounds of the Qingjiao competition had finally ended. Next, the prizes would be given out according to the rankings. Sidu Xingchen did not remember how she accepted the so-called first place. Her entire body was numb, and her mind was in a mess. In comparison, Chu Luiyue was not affected at all. The judges handed over 2 cosmic bags. Sun Zhongyan smiled. Lu Yu, these 2 cosmic bags are your prizes for winning first place in the warrior category and first place in the Shen Master category. The items are inside. You can check them yourself. Envious noises could be heard from the crowd. Just these 2 cosmic bags were precious enough, not to mention the other treasures inside. Chu Luiyue did a simple check and realized that there were some precious Xian formation diagrams, some high-leveled martial arts techniques, and even a mid-level fiend's core of essence. Her lips curled up into a bright smile. Thank you, Elder Sunday. Elder Sun nodded in satisfaction when he saw her being neither servile nor overbearing. There were many good items in the cosmic bag. Chu Luiyue was actually so calm and magnanimous. She was giving face to the academy's director. Of course, the most important thing was her talent and abilities. Other than these, there's one more thing. You can choose any one of the 3 academies and borrow books for free for a month. I asked you a few days ago, and you said that you needed to think about it. Do you have an answer now? Chu Luiyue nodded. Elder Sun, I've thought about it. I want to go to Tai Yen Academy. Once she said that, everyone was shocked. Even though Tai Yen Academy was also an option, it was obvious that Chu Luiyue had completely offended the entire academy. If she went, wouldn't she be causing trouble for herself? Even Cheng Han couldn't help but ask. Are you sure? I'm sure. Chu Luiyue's expression didn't change. She had to personally investigate Hing Jingchua and Yang Jianqing's matter. This was the best opportunity. But don't you welcome her, Director Cheng Han? Cheng Han sneered and slowly said, Why? Why would I? Tai Yen Academy welcomes her. Chu Luiyue pretended not to hear the threat in his words and smiled. Thank you. Emperor Jiawen finally spoke. Lu Yu. Before he could finish his sentence, Eunuch Min suddenly walked over and anxiously said, Your Majesty. Emperor Jiawen said unhappily. Why are you so flustered? Eunuch Min hurriedly knelt down and presented a letter with both hands. Your Majesty, please forgive me. I do have something important to report. The Tianling dynasty's envoy is already 20 kilometers away from the imperial city. He'll arrive soon. Chu Luiyue's heart harshly trembled. She suddenly looked up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iYuan. Chapter 276. Emperor Jiawen was also shocked as he stood up abruptly. What? Didn't they say that it would take some time? Why are they here so suddenly? We aren't prepared yet. Eunuch Min wiped the sweat off his forehead and said fearfully. Your Majesty, I don't know either. What do you think we should do? What should we do? What else can we do? Emperor Jiawen hurriedly walked forward. Of course, I'll personally welcome them. Hearing Emperor Jiawen say this, the Empress hurriedly followed and signaled Rong Jin and Rong Qi with her eyes. Your Majesty, the Crown Prince and I will go with you. Emperor Jiawen thought for a while and agreed. In such an occasion, it would be more solemn with more people. The Empress and the Crown Prince's identities were just right. His footsteps kept moving forward. His face, which had always been expressionless, was visibly nervous. Seeing Emperor Jiawen's reaction, the others naturally didn't dare to delay. Other than Rong Jin, the other princes and princesses immediately stood up and obediently followed. The elders from the 3 academies were also shocked, and their expressions were strange. However, most of the people in the square didn't know what kind of existence the Tianling dynasty was, so they were confused when they saw this scene. Tianling dynasty? What's that? Why haven't I heard of it before? Look at His Majesty's anxious look. I really don't know where the other party is from. Could their status be higher than His Majesty's? Gosh, I heard that there's an existence thousands of miles away that's countless times stronger than our country Yaochen. Could it be, Shu? This matter isn't something we can discuss. Be careful of what you say. Probably because of Emperor Jianghu and the rest's influence, the entire square's atmosphere became strange and tense. Sun Zhongyan thought for a moment. Bai Chen, immediately bring the students back. I'll go with His Majesty. Bai Chen and the rest immediately nodded. This matter concerned the Tianling dynasty, so even they couldn't help but be nervous. But at the same time, they couldn't help but feel curious. One had to know that this was the first time the Tianling dynasty had sent people to country Yaochen in 100 years. If he had the chance to meet him, he might be able to obtain some kind of opportunity. Sun Zhongyan then looked at Fu Yunshan and Cheng Han. As expected, he saw that their faces were also filled with shock. He couldn't care less and quickly said, Brother Yunshan, Brother Cheng'an, this is an important matter. You should bring your students back first. If anything happens, I will immediately. People from the Tianling dynasty are coming? Cheng Han couldn't help but walk up to Sun Zhongyan. He couldn't believe his ears. Why would a top empire that only existed in rumors send people to a small country like country Yaochen? Sun Zhongyan paused for a moment. They're not coming. They're already here. Not many people knew about this piece of news, and Emperor Jiawen clearly said that the news wasn't to be leaked before the people came. Therefore, Cheng Han and the others didn't know about this, so it was normal for them to react this way. Cheng Han sucked in a breath of cold air and spent a lot of effort to calm himself down. However, Eunuch Min's words kept flashing in his mind. The people of the Tianling dynasty were just 20 miles away from the imperial capital. I'll go too. Cheng Han blurted out. What? Sun Zhongyan knitted his brows. Cheng Han shook his sleeves and said sternly, I'm Emperor Jiawen. As the dean of Taiyan Academy, don't I have the right to meet you? Sun Zhongyan was about to retort when Fu Yunshan spoke up. It's fine if we're not here. After all, the esteemed guests are here to visit country Yaochen. But coincidentally, we're here. Your Majesty, why can't you introduce us to them? Cheng Han suddenly became eloquent. This matter concerned the Tianling dynasty, so he naturally couldn't give up on this great opportunity. Seeing that Sun Zhongyan was about to reject him again, Cheng Han decisively turned around and walked toward Emperor Jiawen. Your Majesty, my Taiyan Academy, Director Cheng Han and Director Fu Yunshan can come along. Emperor Jiawen quickly gave a reply as he kept walking forward. At the same time, he kept instructing his subordinates on what to do. He had heard Cheng Han and Fu Yunshan's words clearly. Even if he didn't want anyone else to be involved in this matter, he couldn't reject them in front of so many people. Hence, he quickly decided to let the two of them participate. However, this was enough for Cheng Han and Fu Yunshan. The two of them quickly arranged for the other elders to bring the students back as they quickly followed Emperor Jiawen and the rest. Sun Zhongyan had no choice but to do so. Bai Chen was counting the number of people when he inadvertently turned around and realized that Chu Luiyue was standing there in a daze, not moving at all. Luyu? He shouted, but Chu Luiyue didn't react at all. Luyu? It's time to go. Chu Luiyue then looked over. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes were frighteningly deep and cold. Bai Chen was dazed, and a subtle sense of respect grew in his heart. Chu Luiyue seems a little different. She didn't seem to have changed at all, but Bai Chen strangely felt that there was a terrifying aura around her that couldn't be defied. To be precise, it was a terrifying aura that only a superior person would have. He closed his eyes, and when he looked again, he saw that Chu Luiyue was already walking over. The aura around her had also disappeared as if it had never existed. Teacher Bai Chen, shouted Chu Luiyue. Seeing that she didn't seem to be acting strangely, Bai Chen felt that he might have sensed wrongly, so he didn't think too much about it. Lu Yu, the Qing Jiao competition has ended. You can go back and have a good rest. The people from that place are here? Asked Chu Luiyue suddenly softly. Bai Chen was dazed and nodded. He didn't notice the light that flashed across Chu Luiyue's eyes. I heard that the people from that place are very strong? Chu Luiyue's voice was very soft, as if she was asking curiously. If someone else asked this question, Bai Chen wouldn't be bothered to answer. However, it was different since the person asking was Chu Luiyue. He admired Chu Luiyue before, and Chu Luiyue's performance in the Qingjiao competition had amazed him. Now that he liked Chu Luiyue so much, he was naturally willing to answer some of her questions. That's right. To us, it is a place we can only look at but not reach. Now that they've sent someone here, it's naturally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. Then, she asked jokingly, didn't you say that the person who came in first in the midterm assessment can also go and meet them? Not only did she come in first in the midterm assessment, but she also came in first in the Qingjiao competition. She should be qualified, right? Chu Luiyue asked, but she was laughing coldly in her heart. She never thought that one day, it would be so difficult for her to even meet someone from the Tianling dynasty. Bai Chen was a little troubled. That's right, but the situation now, buzz. The sound of a sword suddenly resounded in the sky. Chu Luiyue looked up and saw a tall figure with fluttering clothes standing on a long sword. The figure broke through the air. A familiar aura rushed towards her. Her heart was beating wildly, as if it would jump out of her mouth at any time. The air in her chest was squeezed out, leaving behind an endless oppressive feeling. Chu Luiyue clenched her fists so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She stared at that person. That was digression. I have to catch a plane in the morning. I'll try to finish writing the update on the way and on the plane, but it'll probably be very late. Mua mua. I feel like I'm about to save an explosive update. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Aiwa. Chapter 277. The Deputy General of the Tianling Dynasty's Black Cavalry, Mu Qinghe. His face was handsome, but there was a scar that extended from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone, which made him look more ferocious. Coupled with his cold aura, he made people feel that it was difficult to get close to him. It was a fighting spirit that had been honed through countless life and death experiences on the battlefield. Although more than a year had passed, Chu Luiyue recognized Mu Qinghe immediately. He was one of her most trusted subordinates. When Chu Luiyue saw that it was him, many emotions flashed through her mind. Confusion. In the Tianling dynasty, everyone knew that the youngest deputy general of the Black Cavalry, Mu Qinghe, was the subordinate of the Heavenly Princess. He was born into a lowly family and had been living in exile since young. He had been following Shanghai Yu since he was 13 years old. Later, he volunteered to join the Black Cavalry and went to the most dangerous place, Dahuang Swamp. He did his best to gain military merits and was promoted to the position of Deputy General in the shortest time possible. When he gained a foothold in the Black Cavalry, Shanghai Yu was about to be in power. At that time, he had military power and became a huge pillar of support for Shanghai Yu. Later on, Shanghai Yu was trapped in the Imperial Ancestral Hall, and all the rescue requests they sent were ignored. Among them, Mu Qinghe was sent. Chu Luiyue looked at the familiar face, and many emotions surged in her heart. After she was reborn, she had thought about the situation countless times and felt that something was wrong. Mu Qinghe had been carrying a communication device with him. Logically speaking, he should have received her message. Even if he didn't know, she had been trapped in the Imperial Ancestral Hall for 3 days and 3 nights. According to Mu Qinghe's usual vigilance, he should have realized that something was wrong. However, from the start to the end, she did not see Mu Qinghe appear. There were many strange things, and she had her suspicions. However, Mu Qinghe was one of the people she trusted the most. He had followed her for many years and had always been loyal. Chu Luiyue didn't want to continue thinking about it. She even worried that Jianghu and Shangguan Wan would do something to Mu Qinghe after her death. But now, Mu Qinghe was here, representing the Tianling dynasty. In other words, Mu Qinghe had not been implicated in her death for more than a year. According to Jianghu's personality, how could he easily let go of anyone who had a close relationship with her? Unless, Mu Qinghe's sudden appearance shocked everyone on the spot. Just the powerful aura on his body alone was enough to disdain him. Emperor Zhaowen reacted first. Vice Admiral Mu. The person who came was actually Mu Qinghe. He had met Mu Qinghe when he went to the Tianling dynasty. At that time, he was still with the princess. Now that the princess was no longer around, It was rumored that the person in power had changed. He originally thought that Mu Qinghe would be defeated, but it seemed like he wasn't affected at all. A ray of light flashed under Mu Qinghe's feet, and the long sword rapidly disappeared. He floated in the air and walked down step by step. His footsteps were steady as if he was walking on flat ground. Chu Luiwei pressed her lips against each other. Mu Qinghe had long been a stage 8 warrior. Now that they were outside Heaven's canopy, his cultivation level seemed to be suppressed to stage 6. Even so, he was still the strongest existence here. The suppression from a top warrior was substantial, and it made everyone in the square unknowingly respect him. The originally spacious square seemed much more cramped at this moment. Everyone quietened down. They were nervous, excited, and full of respect. Most people even lowered their heads and didn't dare to look at Mu Qinghe directly. Mu Qinghe walked in front of Emperor Jiawen. His aura was too strong, and it made Emperor Jiawen seem much smaller and weaker. "Rong Xiao, how have you been?" said Mu Qinghe. His voice was as cold as snow in winter, and it was bone-chilling. Emperor Jiawen couldn't help but shiver. He bowed slightly and was even more respectful. "Vice Admiral Mu came from afar, and we didn't welcome you properly. Please forgive us, Vice Admiral Mu." The two of them had a simple conversation, but it stirred up waves in the crowd's hearts. This man, who's called Vice Admiral Mu, actually dared to call His Majesty by his name. Not only was Emperor Jiawen not angry at all, but he was even more respectful and attentive. This showed that this person's identity was definitely more honorable than imagined. "It's fine. This trip was very sudden," said Mu Qinghe lightly. Even though he said that, his face was still expressionless and exceptionally cold. Emperor Jiawen was still very nervous, and he tried to ask, "Vice Admiral Mu, do you want to change to another place so that you can have a good rest first?" "Right. Don't worry. We've already prepared a place for you, and you can move in immediately. It's already late today, so why don't we officially welcome you tomorrow?" Mu Qinghe thought for a moment and nodded. Emperor Jiawen heaved a sigh of relief. This person was the princess's favorite, and it was rumored that he was hard to get along with. When Emperor Jiawen saw that the envoy was actually him, he was very worried for a while. However, it seemed like it wasn't that exaggerated now. "Then I'll bring you there now. Vice Admiral Mu, please." Emperor Jiawen didn't dare to say the word in front of Mu Qinghe. Mu Qinghe's gaze lightly swept across Emperor Jiawen and the people behind him. Emperor Jiawen didn't know what he was looking at, but he didn't dare to rush him. He could only wait at the side. Mu Qinghe suddenly said, "Qin Jiao competition? It seems like it's not just country Yao Chen. Even the young talents from country Xing Luo and country Huai Tsong are here?" When Qing Han heard that, he was elated and immediately took 2 steps forward. "Greetings, Vice Admiral Mu. I'm the director of country Xing Luo's Tai Yen Academy, Qing Han. It's an honor to meet you." For so many years, the Tianling dynasty was still a rumored existence. This was the first time he saw a strong warrior from the Tianling dynasty, and it sounded like he had a high status. If he could take this chance to get close to him, wouldn't it be just a matter of time before he soared to the top? Mu Qinghe calmly looked at Qing Han. Suddenly, Qing Han felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. His entire body was in excruciating pain. The blood in his body flowed rapidly, and his ears were ringing. He was shocked and wanted to speak, but he realized that he couldn't even open his mouth. Most people didn't notice this, but Fu Yunshan, Sun Zhongyan, and the rest, who were standing nearby, were shocked. No matter what, Qing Han was a stage 5 celestial physician and a stage 4 warrior. Even if his combat skills weren't top-notch, he wasn't easy to deal with. However, this man, no, he didn't even make a move. He just looked at him, and Qing Han was suppressed to this extent. His strength was unfathomable. More importantly, this man looked very young. He was at most in his 20s, but he had already reached such a level. After a while, Mu Qinghe retracted her gaze, and Qing Han felt the pressure on him disappear. His lips and teeth were filled with the strong smell of blood. He took a step back in panic and didn't dare to speak again. Mu Qinghe turned around and was about to leave when she suddenly felt a gaze on her. Her eyes flickered and she turned to look. Digression, bad news. My plane took off 3 hours later, so I had to wait again. Good news, I don't have to ride on the plane anymore. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveWeb. Chapter 278. That night, Chu Luiwei did not sleep well. In a blur, she seemed to have had a very long dream. In the dream, there were many scenes that kept appearing. However, in the end, they were all burnt to a crisp and were all annihilated in a ball of flames. When Rong Xiu arrived, he saw Chu Luiwei lying on the bed, her brows tightly furrowed and her body curled up into a ball, muttering something softly. The moonlight shone through the window, elongating his tall figure. Half of his face was in the light, while the other half was in the dark. His eyes were as deep as the sea, but there seemed to be an icy flame burning within them. He walked forward and pulled her into his arms. Chu Luiwei was like a traveler walking in the desert who had finally found an oasis. She subconsciously leaned closer. Rong Xiu bent down and kissed her forehead lightly. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." Chu Luiwei grabbed the front of his shirt with both hands. Her eyes were tightly shut, but a teardrop fell from the corner of her eye. Rong Xiu sucked that teardrop away. The tip of his tongue was bitter. He moved back a little and looked at the person in his arms. His voice was low, drifting in the night wind, so low that it was almost inaudible. "What will come will come." The next morning, when Chu Luiwei woke up, she smelled a familiar cold fragrance on her body. She immediately understood that Rong Xiu had come. Actually, even without this smell, she would have been able to guess. In the first half of the night, she had been restless and had nightmares, but in the second half of the night, she had quietly calmed down and become at ease. Only Rong Xiu could be like this. Unknowingly, she had long gotten used to Rong Xiu's existence and gradually developed a dependence on him. A hint of sweetness overflowed from the bottom of her heart. Chu Luiwei took a deep breath and walked to the window, looking at Yifeng Courtyard. Rong Xiu was not in the courtyard at this moment. She could only see the lush peach tree. A gentle breeze blew, making her much more clear-headed. Since she had already reached this step, she could only continue forward. "Luiwei." Someone was calling her name downstairs. Chu Luiwei tidied up briefly and went downstairs to open the door. It was Teacher Bai Chen. "Teacher Bai Chen? Why are you here?" Bai Chen's expression was a little complicated. There was excitement and worry. He handed over an invitation. "This is the invitation for today's palace banquet. His Majesty wants to welcome that person. You took first place in the midterm examination and performed very well at the youth's meeting, so you are also invited." This was an extremely good thing. After all, not everyone was qualified to meet the envoys of the Tianling dynasty. But Deputy General Mu seemed to treat Chu Luiwei a little differently yesterday. She didn't know if he would take Chu Luiwei's rebuttal to heart. Chu Luiwei took the invitation. "Thank you, Teacher Bai Chen. I will be punctual tonight." "Luiwei," Teacher Bai Chen said hesitantly. You have to be careful when you follow Elder Sunday. Are you worried that Deputy General Mu will target me?" Chu Luiwei immediately guessed Bai Chen's worries. The corners of her mouth curled up. "Don't worry. If someone of his status really wanted to do anything to me, he wouldn't have waited until the palace banquet." Bai Chen thought about it and found that was true. "What you said is not unreasonable. But it's better to be more cautious." Bai Chen said a few more words before leaving. After Chu Luiwei thanked him, she looked at the invitation in her hand again. The corners of her mouth slowly curled up into a smile. She had waited for this day for too long. At noon, there was still an hour before the banquet officially started. The seats on the left and right sides of the Jiaoyang Hall were already filled with people. Only a few seats at the head of the table were still empty. Clothes were worn, and people were toasting each other. Everyone was chatting with each other, and the atmosphere seemed very harmonious. But in fact, everyone's eyes would look up from time to time. They had all come today for that Deputy General Mu of the Tianling dynasty. "Mother, you have to help me this time." Rong Zhen moved closer to the Empress and begged incessantly. "That Deputy General Mu is so powerful, he'll definitely be able to help me recover." She had seen it clearly in the square yesterday. That Deputy General Mu's strength was stronger than anyone she had ever seen before. The Empress felt some hope in her heart. She patted Rongzhen's hand and comforted her in a low voice. "Don't worry, Mother will definitely find a chance to help you ask for it. But that Deputy General Mu seems to be a cold person, so I don't know if he will help." "Why not?" "He definitely will." Rongzhen's eyes lit up and her face was full of admiration. "Mother, I feel that although he looks cold, but—" Her cheeks blushed. The Empress's heart skipped a beat. Looking at Rongzhen, she had clearly fallen in love with that Mu Qinghe. She had really gone crazy. "Jinshin, what kind of person are you? You're not someone we can provoke. You'd better get rid of that thought as soon as possible." The smile on Rongzhen's face immediately disappeared. "Mother, what do you mean by that? He's the most powerful person I've seen all these years. Even Imperial Brother can't compare to him." "Why can't?" The Empress hurriedly pulled her arm and quickly scanned the surroundings. Only when she found that no one was paying attention to them did she feel slightly relieved. "What else could I mean? You know very well in your heart. Mother will only tell you one thing. This time, I only want to help you recover your body. You're not allowed to have any wild thoughts about anything else." That Mu Qinghe was obviously a ruthless person. Not to mention that he didn't like Rongzhen. Even if he did, he could easily toy with Rongzhen in the palm of his hand. Rongzhen had long been raised to be very willful after so many years. When she was around such a person, the slightest carelessness could cost her life. In short, don't mention it again. If this path doesn't work, then we'll do it according to Chu Liuyue's method. The Empress's expression became a little more severe. Rongzhen didn't dare to make a fuss anymore and pursed her lips. "Got it. But that Chu Liyue is really a fox. He actually dared to seduce me in front of so many people yesterday." The Empress gave her a warning look. Only then did Rongzhen shut her mouth completely, but her disgust for Chu Liyue deepened. If she found out that Chu Liyue still dared to act like this at the banquet today, she would definitely not let Chu Liyue off easily. After Chu Liyue arrived with Elder Sun and the others, she sat down in her seat and waited quietly. She could feel a lot of eyes on her, but she didn't care. She slowly swirled the wine cup in her hand. "Until Tianling Dynasty's Deputy General Mu has arrived." She turned her head to look. Mu Qinghe walked in from outside the door. Emperor Zhouwen was half a step behind and respectfully invited him to take a seat. For a moment, the hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. After a while, everyone bowed in unison. Mu Qinghe's gaze swept across the crowd. Almost uncontrollably, his gaze once again landed on Chu Liyue. Emperor Zhouwen thought that he was still angry about what happened yesterday, so he said eagerly, "Vice General Mu, didn't you come here to find some outstanding geniuses? Chu Liyue is one of the best among them. Perhaps you also know that she's a rare martial artist, mystic adept, and heavenly doctor." Mu Qinghe's gaze flickered. "What a coincidence, I have an old friend who's also a martial artist." Digression. I'll probably only be able to update one chapter tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, but it won't be as late as today. I'll be back to normal in a few days. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website. Chapter 279. How are you worthy of using this name? This sentence clearly landed in Chu Liuyue's ears. She almost couldn't help but laugh. "I'm not worthy? This is my name. How am I not worthy?" Mu Qinghe's words almost made her think that he was speaking up for her. But, is that possible? If Mu Qinghe had always been loyal to me and never betrayed me, why would I die so tragically a year ago? As for him, how was it possible that he wasn't affected at all after her death? The Black Cavalry's lieutenant was an important position. Jianghu was very ambitious. How could he let her remaining henchmen continue to occupy these positions? She was almost certain that Mu Qinghe had long sided with Jianghu without her knowledge. If not, there was really no way to explain everything that happened afterward. Upon seeing his reaction, Chu Liyue was shocked and felt that it was a joke. Where was he when I asked for help back then? What did he do when I was forced to take my virginity? After I died, he even killed the snow deer and made it into a pair of boots, stepping on it every day. Now he's saying all this again. Don't you find it contradictory? Chu Luiwei had too many questions and too much hatred. All of it accumulated in her heart, making her unable to breathe. But in the end, she still took a deep breath and lowered her head. Even if you think that you're unworthy, you have no right to change it. Lu Yu, what are you talking about? Emperor Zhouwen was shocked and immediately reprimanded him. Hurry up and apologize to Vice Admiral Mu. As he spoke, he nervously looked at Mu Qinghe. Vice Admiral Mu, this child is still young, and he really didn't mean to contradict you. Please don't take it to heart. Why don't you let Lu Yu change his name? It's just a name. Do you have to make such a fuss? Not to mention a mere Chu Luiwei, even he would not dare to go against Mu Qinghe. Chu Luiwei had always been smart. What was wrong with him today? Mu Qinghe stared at Chu Luiwei. That's not necessary. With that, he turned around and left. His steps seemed slow, but his speed was very fast. Emperor Zhouwen gave Chu Luiwei a warning look. You brat. Consider yourself lucky today. Don't do it again, do you understand? Chu Luiwei's tense heart relaxed a little. Even though she knew that Emperor Zhouwen was worried that she would be implicated, she still remembered his kindness in helping her. She smiled and her eyes curved. Thank you, Your Majesty. Emperor Zhouwen grunted, turned around, and quickly caught up with Mu Qinghe. The group of figures quickly disappeared before everyone's eyes. After a long while, the quiet square became noisy again. Chu Luiwei heard quite a few people talking about her. I wonder where that Vice Admiral Mu came from. What did he mean when he said that about Chu Luiwei? I thought that he was interested in Chu Luiwei since he has that face. However, it seems like Chu Luiwei has offended him. There are so many people here, but he only talked to Chu Luiwei. I think he's not simple. That person looks like a murderous god. How can he be moved by a woman? I think Chu Luiwei is more mysterious. It was obvious that most people did not think highly of what happened today. Mu Hongyu ran over and nervously asked, Chu Luiwei? Lu Yu? What exactly happened just now? Chu Luiwei lightly said, What else could it be? What else could it be? He's just asking for my name. Besides, he seemed very unhappy with my name. How can you be so calm? That's... Mu Hongyu lowered her voice. That's someone from the Tunling dynasty. Chu Luiwei nodded indifferently. I know. She used to be someone from the Tianling dynasty and was this person's master. You, sigh. Mu Hongyu looked at Chu Luiwei's indifferent expression and felt that it was useless for her to say anything more. Did she know that if she really made that person unhappy, her life would be in danger? Didn't she see that His Majesty was so respectful to him? It was really the case that the eunuch was not worried. Since the competition is over, it's time to go back. Let's go? Chu Luiwei said and walked forward with a calm expression. Mu Hongyu hurriedly caught up and wanted to try her best to persuade Chu Luiwei, but she swallowed her words when she saw Chu Luiwei's tired expression. Chu Luiwei had been competing for the past few days and did not have a good rest. Since things are already like this, let's just let him be. With this thought, Mu Hongyu felt much more relaxed. She then held Chu Luiwei's arm and left. Sigh, Lu Yu, I saw your previous competition. Gu Mingfeng and Sun Hu also followed. The few of them acted as if nothing had happened, so the others did not say much. After these people left, the remaining people also felt bored and dispersed. The people from Taiyan Academy and Nanfeng Academy also prepared to leave. Xingchen? Xingchen? Emotsong saw that Situ Xingchen was still staring at a certain spot and raised his voice. Situ Xingchen recovered her senses. We should go. Emotsong walked to her side and followed her line of sight. You're looking at that Vice Admiral Mu? Situ Xingchen nodded and felt a little regretful. I didn't expect to see such a person here. Country Xingluo is not inferior to country Yaochen, so why don't we have such a fortuitous encounter? It's naturally not easy for us to guess such a powerful existence, Emotsong muttered. When he recalled Cheng Han's appearance just now, he felt a little scared. That person's abilities are really unfathomable. Situ Xingchen did not say anything. Actually, other than being shocked by Vice Admiral Mu's appearance, she was more concerned about Why did he look at Chu Luiyue differently? There were tens of thousands of people in the square, and Chu Luiyue was standing further away back then. Why did that man choose Chu Luiyue? In terms of looks, I'm not inferior to Chu Luiyue. Also, what did he mean by those words? To others, perhaps Chu Luiyue was unlucky and might even be punished because of this. However, I didn't sense any killing intent toward Chu Luiyue from that man. I keep feeling that something is amiss. Mu Qinghe was a little distracted throughout the journey. In actual fact, he had not thought of that person for a very long time. For some reason, when he saw that girl today, he subconsciously thought of many things from the past. He wanted to get rid of the images in his mind, but he realized that the more he tried to do so, the clearer he remembered them. Those scenes appeared in front of his eyes again and again. She laughed, she was sad, she was nervous, she was cunning, she was majestic. And her hopeless face. In the end, for some reason, those images overlapped one another and gradually faded away. In the end, only a pair of eyes was left. They were watery, but they were quiet and bright like obsidian. His heart suddenly skipped a beat. That Chu Luiyue has the same eyes as her. Digression. The sequence of the previous chapter's questions was written wrongly. Please don't mind it and just ignore it. Then, I'll get off the plane now and get on the subway. I'll try my best to update the 5th chapter as soon as possible. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 280. That night, Chu Luiyue did not sleep well. Vaguely, she seemed to have had a very long dream. In the dream, many scenes kept appearing. However, in the end, they were all destroyed in a ball of fire. When Rong Xiu arrived, he saw Chu Luiyue lying on the bed. Her eyebrows were tightly knitted, and her body was curled up into a ball. She was muttering something in a low voice. The moonlight shone through the window, elongating his tall figure. Half of his face was in the light, while the other half was in the dark. His eyes were as deep as the sea, but there seemed to be a cold flame burning in them. He stepped forward and took her into his arms. Chu Luiyue was like a traveler in the desert who finally found an oasis. She subconsciously leaned closer to him. Rong Xiu lowered his head and kissed her forehead. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Chu Luiyue grabbed the front of his clothes with both hands. Her eyes were closed, but a teardrop fell from the corner of her eye. Rong Xiu sucked that teardrop away. The tip of his tongue was bitter. He stepped back a little and looked at the person in his arms. His voice was low, drifting in the night wind. It was so low that it could not be heard. What will come will come. The next morning, Chu Luiyue woke up and smelled a familiar cold fragrance on her body. She immediately understood that Rong Xiu had come. In fact, even if there was no smell, she could probably guess. In the first half of the night, she was restless and had nightmares. However, in the second half of the night, she quietly calmed down and became at ease. Only Rong Xiu could be like this. Unconsciously, she had already gotten used to Rong Xiu's existence and gradually developed a dependence on him. A trace of sweetness overflowed from the bottom of her heart. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath, walked to the window, and looked at Yifeng courtyard. Rong Xiu was not in the courtyard at this time. She could only see the lush peach tree. The breeze blew, waking her up a lot. Since he had already reached this step, he could only continue moving forward. Lu Yu. Someone was calling her name downstairs. Chu Luiyue simply tidied up and went downstairs to open the door. The person who came was actually Teacher Bai Chen. Teacher Bai Chen? Why are you here? Bai Chen had a complicated expression on his face. He was excited and worried at the same time. He handed over an invitation card. This is the invitation card for today's banquet. His Majesty wanted to hold a welcoming dinner for that person. You came in first place in the midterm assessment, and your performance in the Qingjiao competition was also very outstanding, so you were invited as well. This was supposed to be an excellent thing. After all, not everyone was qualified to meet the Tianling dynasty's envoys. However, Vice Admiral Mu from yesterday seemed to treat Chu Luiyue differently. She wondered if he would take Chu Luiyue's rebuttal to heart. Chu Luiyue took the invitation. Thank you, Teacher Bai Chen. I'll be there on time tonight. Lu Yu, teacher Bai Chen said hesitantly. You'll follow Elder Sunday. Be careful. You're worried that Vice Admiral Mu will target me? Chu Luiwei immediately guessed Bai Chen's concern. The corners of her mouth curled up. Don't worry. If someone of his status really wanted to do something to me, he wouldn't wait until the banquet. Bai Chen thought about it and agreed. What you said is not without reason. However, it's better to be cautious. Bai Chen said a few more words before leaving. After Chu Luiwei thanked him, she looked at the invitation card in her hand. She slowly curled the corners of her lips and smiled. She had been waiting for this day for too long. At noon, there was still an hour before the banquet officially started. In the Jiaoyang Palace, the left and right sides were already filled with people. Only a few seats at the top were still empty. Clothes and hair were messy, and people were toasting each other. Everyone chatted with each other, and the atmosphere seemed very harmonious. However, everyone's eyes were actually looking up from time to time. Today, they were all here for the Tianling dynasty's Vice Admiral Mu. Mother, you have to help me this time. Rongzhen leaned close to the Empress and kept begging. That Vice Admiral Mu is so powerful. He can definitely help me recover. She had seen it clearly at the square yesterday. That Lieutenant General Mu's strength was stronger than anyone she had ever seen before. The Empress also had more hope in her heart. She patted her hand and comforted her softly. Don't worry. Mother will definitely find a chance to help you beg him. However, that Vice Admiral Mu looks very cold. I don't know if he will help. Why wouldn't he? He definitely will. Rongzhen's eyes lit up, and her face was filled with admiration. Imperial Mother, I feel that although he looks cold, but 2 streaks of red flew up her cheeks. The Empress's heart skipped a beat. Seeing Rongzhen like this, it's obvious that she likes that Mu Qinghe. She's really crazy. Zhen, what kind of person are you? He's not someone we can trifle with. You better get rid of this thought as soon as possible. The smile on Rongzhen's face immediately disappeared. Mother, what do you mean by that? He's the most powerful person I've seen all these years. Even Brother Royal can't compare to him. Why can't I? The Empress hurriedly pulled her arm and quickly scanned the surroundings. She was slightly relieved when she realized that no one was paying attention to them. What else could it mean? You know it clearly in your heart. I'll only tell you one thing. I only want to help you recover this time. You're not allowed to think about anything else. That Mu Qinghe is clearly a ruthless person. Not to mention that he doesn't like Rongzhen. Even if he did, he could easily play Rongzhen in the palm of his hand. After so many years, Rongzhen was already very willful. When she was beside such a person, she would lose her life if she wasn't careful. Anyway, don't mention it again. If this path doesn't work, we'll do it according to Chu Liuyue's method. The Empress's expression became sterner. Rongzhen didn't dare to make a fuss anymore and pouted. Got it. But that Chu Luiyue is really seductive. He actually dared to seduce me in front of so many people yesterday. The Empress gave her a warning look. Rongzhen then completely shut up, but the hatred she had for Chu Luiyue in her heart deepened. If she found out that Chu Luiyue still dared to do this at the banquet today, she definitely wouldn't let Chu Luiyue have a good time. After Chu Luiyue arrived with Old Master Sun and the rest, he sat down in his seat and waited quietly. She could feel many gazes landing on her, but she didn't care. She slowly turned the wine glass in her hand. Until Tianling dynasty's Vice Admiral Mu arrives. She turned to look. Mu Qinghe was walking in, and Emperor Jiaowen was half a step behind him as he respectfully invited him to take a seat. For a moment, the hall was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. After a while, the crowd bowed in unison. Mu Qinghe's gaze swept across the crowd. He almost couldn't control his gaze as it stopped on Chu Luiyue again. Emperor Jiaowen thought that he was still angry about yesterday's incident, so he eagerly said, Vice Admiral Mu, didn't you come here to find some outstanding talents? Chu Luiyue is one of them. You might also know that she's a rare talent, a warrior, a Xian master, and a celestial physician. Mu Qinghe's gaze flickered. What a coincidence. I have an old friend who's also a triple talent. Digression, I can only update one chapter at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, but it won't be as late as today. I'll adjust back in the next few days. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Yuan. Chapter 281. That's such a coincidence. Emperor Jianghu had just heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Mu Qinghe wasn't smiling. Instead, she looked at Chu Luiyue with a judgmental gaze. Only then did he realize that this didn't seem to make Mu Qinghe happy. "You're a triple cultivator? Which one is more outstanding?" asked Mu Qinghe lightly. The hall was very quiet as the emperor's gaze shifted between Mu Qinghe and Chu Luiyue. Mu Qinghe treated Chu Luiyue differently yesterday, and she picked me to talk to when she just arrived today. It would be a blatant lie if I said that I didn't treat Chu Luiyue well. I just don't know if this is a good or bad sign. Before Chu Luiyue could speak, Sun Zhongyan spoke first. Lu Yu took first place in the warrior and Xian master competitions. As for the celestial physician, she's also very outstanding. Yesterday, he heard this person mention to Emperor Jianghu that he seemed to have the intention to select some outstanding talents. Even if he really didn't like Chu Luiyue, he probably wouldn't go overboard on account of her talent. Mu Qinghe's expression didn't change. "Oh, it seems like you're an all-rounder?" Chu Luiyue could hear the mockery in his voice. He had been by her side for many years, and she was very familiar with his words and actions. Even though his face was always expressionless, Chu Luiyue could always guess what he was thinking. "It seems like he clearly doesn't think highly of my all-rounder. Rong Xiao said that you're 14 this year. What's your warrior level?" "Vice Admiral Mu, Stage 2. What's your Xian Master level?" "Second 2. What grade of pill can you refine?" "4th grade. Mu Qinghe chuckled. "It seems like you're only slightly talented in celestial physician, but that's all." Chu Luiyue curtsied. "Your Majesty and elder son are overpraising him. With Lu Yu's insignificant talent, Vice Admiral Mu naturally wouldn't take a liking to him." Mu Qinghe saw that her expression was calm and did not show any signs of anger. The inexplicable anger in her heart from being offended dissipated a lot. "At least you know your place." Back then, when that person was 14 years old, Mu Qinghe seemed to have thought of something, and his expression suddenly turned cold. Why was he thinking of that person again? She was not the only all-rounder in this world, but how many could be compared to her? He didn't say anything else and walked back to his seat with a cold face. Emperor Jianghu was beside him, and he very sensitively felt that the latter's aura suddenly became much colder. Hence, he couldn't help but feel even more confused. What's going on? Weren't they having a good chat just now? Chu Luiyue's every word was very appropriate, and there was no problem at all. Why does Mu Qinghe not like me? Even if Chu Luiyue's talent can't be compared to those people from the Tianling dynasty, he's definitely considered one of the top talents in country Yaochen. Emperor Jianghu was confused, and the others were even more so. Chu Luiyue is actually only SOSO in Mu Qinghe's eyes? Then, aren't the rest of us even worse? But thinking about it carefully, this Vice Admiral Mu looks like she's only in her 20s, but her abilities are far beyond our reach. Hence, they seem to understand. It seems like the Tianling dynasty is much stronger than we thought. After Mu Qinghe and Emperor Jianghu sat down, the crowd carefully sat down. The two of them sat at the head of the table, and Emperor Jianghu was still sitting in the middle. However, Mu Qinghe's aura was even stronger. Just by sitting there, her surroundings seemed to have frozen. Everyone in the palace became much more reserved. Even though quite a few people wanted to perform well in order to gain Vice Admiral Mu's favor, they all obediently sat there under the deterrence of a top warrior. Mu Qinghe was a little frustrated. After he went back yesterday, he felt that he had really lost his composure. Who is Chu Luiyue? She's just an ordinary girl in this small country Yaochen. He came here because he had something important to do, but after seeing Chu Luiyue, he thought of many messy things, which caused his emotions to become messed up. I really care too much about Chu Luiyue. Or rather, Chu Luiyue reminds me of that person too easily. Other than their eyes, they clearly don't look alike in any other way. Mu Qinghe poured a glass of wine and slowly felt around. When Chu Luiyue looked up, she saw that Mu Qinghe seemed to have sunk into deep thought, and she didn't know what he was thinking about. Her gaze landed on his wineglass, and she laughed self-deprecatingly. In the past, Mu Qinghe never touched a drop of wine. Only a little more than a year had passed, but so many changes had happened. As if sensing her gaze, Mu Qinghe looked up again. "What are you looking at?" Chu Luiyue stood up and smiled. "Vice Admiral Mu came from afar, and it must be tough on you. Lu Yu was too rash yesterday, so I'll toast you here. I hope you can forgive me." Then, he picked up the wineglass in front of him and finished it in one gulp. What a fox! Rongjun cursed in her heart. Ever since Mu Qinghe came in, Chu Luiyue had been using all sorts of methods to attract his attention. Now, she was even more brazenly seducing him. There are so many people present, and all of them are more qualified than me to toast to him. Mu Qinghe then looked at the wineglass in his hand. A strong wine aroma wafted into his nose. He knitted his brows in disgust and put the wineglass down. Bam! The wineglass made of green jade landed on the table and made a crisp sound. There was a moment of silence in the hall. Everyone looked at one another. "Is he angry again?" "I don't drink wine," said Mu Qinghe coldly. Each and every word was extremely cold and hard. Shock flashed across Chu Luiyue's face. He still doesn't drink wine. So he was thinking about something else when he poured the wine just now? When he's deep in thought, he often gets distracted and takes the wrong things. It seems like this is the same as before. Emperor Zhouwen realized something and hurriedly scolded the palace maid beside him. "How did you serve him? Who put this wine on the table?" "Your Majesty, please forgive me." A palace maid anxiously knelt down and begged for mercy. However, she felt very wronged. Who knew that this VIP didn't drink wine? Isn't he a general from the military? Why doesn't he drink wine? Chu Luiyue quickly looked down, and a tinge of panic flashed across her face. "Lu Yu was too rash and it's all my fault. Vice Admiral Mu and Your Majesty, please don't implicate others." Rongjun proudly grunted. Let's see if she still dares to be so impudent. Originally, Mu Qinghe didn't like her. Now that this happened, let's see if she still dares to be so arrogant. Didn't she just get first place in the Qingjiao competition? What's there to be proud of? Can't she see that I don't even like her? Rongjun didn't think that if Mu Qinghe didn't like Chu Luiyue, he wouldn't like anyone else in the palace. Mu Qinghe's face darkened for a while. Just as the crowd was thinking about how he was going to punish Chu Luiyue, he said, "Don't worry. Forget it. Digression, I'll update it as soon as possible today, so everyone should be able to read it together tonight. Myo mobile users, please browse and read it. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 282. The crowd couldn't figure out Mu Qinghe's thoughts, so they all quietened down. On the other hand, Chu Luiyue was very calm as if nothing had happened. She sat down and allowed all sorts of gazes to size her up. She could roughly guess that Mu Qinghe recalled the past, but she didn't know where his anger came from. After meeting him this time, she realized that Mu Qinghe's personality seemed to have changed a lot. Even though he was quiet in the past, he wasn't as unpredictable as he was now. Emperor Zhouwen came out to smooth things over. Vice Admiral Mu, you said yesterday that you came here to pick some people to cultivate with you. Is that true?" Everyone's attention immediately shifted to Mu Qinghe. Countless pairs of eyes were filled with anticipation and excitement. Follow Mu Qinghe back? Isn't that going to the Tianling dynasty? This is a great opportunity. The Tianling dynasty is such a powerful existence. In the entire country Yaochen, only Emperor Zhouwen has the right to go there. The others don't even need to think about it. I didn't expect to have such a chance now. Mu Qinghe actually came here personally to pick people. That's right. Mu Qinghe's short 2 words immediately made the crowd's heart skip a beat. Even though Emperor Zhouwen already knew about this yesterday, he still felt very excited when it was brought up. There was an unconcealable glow of excitement in that pair of old eyes that were always calm and unperturbed. Almost all of country Yaochen's most outstanding talents are here. Take a look and see if there's anyone you like. Other than the princes and princesses, there were also important figures from the various aristocratic families, Tianlu Academy's elder son, and the rest. Of course, There were also Fu Yunshan and Cheng Han. Upon hearing Mu Qinghe's affirmative answer, the two of them looked at each other and saw the eagerness in each other's eyes. Mu Qinghe actually came here to pick people. He even wants to bring them back to the Tianling dynasty. I really don't know what kind of luck country Yaochen has. However, since we're here, we might as well join in. After all, there were many outstanding geniuses in the two academies. As long as one was chosen, their future was limitless. Mu Qinghe swept her gaze across the crowd. Those who were seen by him unconsciously straightened their shoulders and held their breaths. Vice Admiral Mu. Rong Jin suddenly stood up. I wonder if I can recommend myself? Out of habit, he wanted to say, this consort, but he suddenly remembered that even Imperial Father didn't dare to call himself Zhen in front of Mu Qinghe, so he hurriedly changed his words. Emperor Jiawen didn't expect Rong Jin to take the initiative and was very surprised. But on second thought, Rong Jin was the most talented among all the princes, so he could give it a try. If even he couldn't do it, then there was no need to mention the others. After all, he was the crown prince. He should have the courage and insight. Mu Qinghe glanced at him. Rank 4 warrior? Such a powerhouse would be able to tell the level of other cultivators with just a glance. Rong Jin nodded nervously. In another month, I should be able to break through to rank 5 warrior. The crowd stared at him in shock. It wasn't easy to break through to rank 5 warrior, and many people were stuck at this stage their entire lives. But since Rong Jin dared to say this in front of everyone, he must be confident. Sensing the crowd's reaction, Rong Jin was delighted. Even though he lost to Heng Jingchua at the Qingjiao competition a few days ago and was poisoned, it wasn't without benefits. After clearing the poison in his body, he shockingly realized that he seemed to have signs of breaking through. He had been cultivating diligently for the past 2 days, and he had vaguely touched that invisible barrier. Hence, he concluded that he could definitely break through in another month. This was actually a pleasant surprise. He originally wanted to wait until he really broke through, but he couldn't care less now. As long as he could get Mu Qinghe's praise, then, should? There's no should or shouldn't when it comes to cultivation. As long as you don't break through, you're still a stage 4 warrior. Mu Qinghe's voice was cold as if she wasn't moved. Rong Jin was dazed. He looked up and saw the obvious indifference in Mu Qinghe's eyes. This was the attitude of a strong warrior towards an ant. Rong Jin was dazed. You should be over 20 years old this year, right? Rong Jin nodded hesitantly. Mu Qinghe snorted. Then, how can you stand here and say that you're volunteering yourself? What right do you have? Rong Jin didn't expect to be humiliated by Mu Qinghe in front of so many people. His face flushed red. Mu Qinghe's every word made him feel extremely embarrassed. He had been outstanding since he was young, and he had always been praised by others. This was the first time he was looked down upon. Emperor Jiawen looked awkward. Rong Zhen thought for a while and suddenly smiled playfully. Lieutenant Mu, my brother is already the most outstanding. If you don't even like him, then no one here will be able to catch your eye. Her smile was bright, and her tone was light as if she was acting coquettishly. Mu Qinghe glanced at her. Rong Zhen's heart raced. She was nervous and expectant. Who are you? Mu Qinghe coldly spat out a few words. The smile on Rong Zhen's face froze. The palace was dead silent. Chu Luiwei looked down and played with the empty wine glass in his hand as his lips curved up. Mu Qinghe climbed up from the bottom, so she was very determined. After he became her right-hand man, countless girls wanted to throw themselves at him. Of all shapes and sizes, what had he not seen before? But before she died, he was 27 years old, and he still didn't have a wife or concubine. Rong Zhen really didn't deserve to be ranked. He didn't know where she got her confidence from to think that Mu Qinghe would fall for her tricks. Rong Zhen had never been humiliated like this in public, and her face was as pale as a sheet. Emperor Jiawen was already scolding Rong Zhen in his heart. How stupid! Can't she see that even I don't dare to speak up for Rong Jin? She actually dares to speak up like this? She's really embarrassing the royal family. You don't have the right to speak. He harshly chided. Rong Zhen's eyes turned red and tears fell. The Empress gave a look to the person behind her to pull Rongzhen back before letting her sit down again. The atmosphere in the palace became even colder. Mu Qinghe asked, "Among you, who has a Daijing Yuan meridian?" Daijing Yuan meridian. The moment these few words came out, it made everyone's faces turn silly. How many years did it take for a genius to have a Daijing Yuan meridian to appear? It was fine if Mu Qinghe didn't say it, but she actually had such high standards once she opened her mouth. If she were to find someone based on this standard, none of the people here would be qualified. It seems like there aren't any. Chu Liyue's heart tingled and he stood up. I am. Digression, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 283. The woman in front of him was beautiful and had curved eyebrows and eyes. Her eyes were very similar to hers. But if one looked carefully, there were some differences. She used to be as high as the sun, high above the clouds and unparalleled in the world. Even if she just stood there, she could make people submit to her and not dare to blaspheme her. However, the Chu Liyue in front of him had more of a worldly aura. Although her eyes looked clear, if one looked carefully, one would find that there were too many things hidden in Chu Liyue's eyes. Curiosity, eagerness, flattery, and a trace of expectation. He had seen too many people looking at him like this. People who wanted to get something from him would always look at him like this. Probably because she was still young. Although her expression was very calm, her eyes couldn't lie. The subtle feeling in Mu Qinghe's heart gradually dissipated. The pair of eyes in his mind gradually became clear and became two people. It's okay. He suddenly felt a little bored. Without saying anything more, he turned around and left. Hong Yao reluctantly looked at Chu Liyue and then followed Mu Qinghe. This time, it was very obedient and didn't look back. Vice Admiral Mu, take care. Chu Liyue bowed respectfully. When Mu Qinghe's figure gradually disappeared in front of her, the eager smile on her face gradually disappeared. She pursed her lips into a straight line, looking a little cold. She had fooled him today, but she had to be more careful in the future. Fortunately, Hong Yao had always been very obedient. After sensing her thoughts, it really didn't pounce on her again. Chu Liyue stood in place for a long time. It wasn't until her neck itched that she came to her senses. She looked down and saw Dumpling squatting on her shoulder, looking at her pitifully with a pair of round eyes. Chu Liyue tapped its head. You feel wronged? You almost got me into big trouble today, do you know that? Dumpling actually fought with Hong Yao in front of so many people. If Mu Qinghe pursued the matter, not to mention Dumpling, even she would have to bear the consequences. Dumpling rubbed her cheeks ingratiatingly. Hong Yao has a noble status and is very powerful. Don't provoke it in the future. Chu Liyue continued. However, when Dumpling heard this, she immediately stared at Chu Liyue with her eyes wide open, full of accusation. You're actually speaking up for that guy. Who exactly is your magical beast? Chu Liyue raised his eyebrows and looked at it. Today should be the first time you met the Red Demon, right? Why are you so hostile? It didn't provoke you. Dumpling shook her head frantically. He had provoked them. He had provoked them. That guy actually dared to throw himself into Chu Liyue's arms. How audacious! Plucking a tuft of hair was just a simple lesson to it. If there was a second time, let's see how I'll deal with it. Seeing Dumpling's high fighting spirit, Chu Liyue was silent for a moment and simply gave up trying to persuade it. Although Dumpling hadn't been with her for long, she had already figured out its character. Since it dared to openly attack Hong Yao in the main hall today, it would only fight more fiercely in private. It was useless to persuade it. Your temper is really like Hong Yao's, Chu Liyue muttered softly, but she didn't say the rest of the sentence. If it was in the past, she could at least mediate, but the situation was different now. Hong Yao's identity was extraordinary, and it could almost do whatever it wanted in country Yaochen. If Dumpling continued to target it and even fought with it, people with ulterior motives would definitely not let her off easily. Chu Liyue's slender and fair fingers gently tapped Dumpling's nose. If you're not obedient, I won't bring you out next time. This sentence finally worked, and a hint of hesitation flashed across Dumpling's eyes. If I can't come out with Chu Luiyue, what should I do if that fellow takes advantage of the situation? In the end, it could only nod its head unwillingly. Chu Luiyue sighed softly. For some reason, she had a feeling. When Hong Yao and Dumpling meet again, they will definitely fight again. Let's go. There's still a lot of trouble waiting for us in the future. Clatter. Inside the room, the sound of all sorts of things being smashed could be heard. It wasn't hard to imagine the anger of the owner. The palace servants all stood in the courtyard and looked inside from time to time, trembling in fear. Are you done? The Empress's authoritative voice sounded, and Rong Zhen, who was on the verge of losing control, finally found a trace of rationality. She glanced at the Empress, and her eyes were red as if she had suffered a great grievance. But this time, the Empress didn't console her like before. Instead, she was even angrier. You're still feeling wronged? Do you know what you've done today? That person is the envoy of the Tianling dynasty, and he has seen many tricks up his sleeves. Your thoughts have already been seen through by him. Who do you think you are? Rong Zhen looked at the Empress in disbelief. Ever since she was young, her mother had always doted on her. Even if she was willful and rash, her mother would always reprimand her. She had never been reprimanded by her mother like this before. Rong Zhen's face turned pale, and her body swayed as if she couldn't take such a blow. But the Empress didn't intend to stop. She took a few steps forward and stood in front of Rong Zhen, looking at her sternly. Do you know that if you weren't careful today, not only would you lose your life, but other people would also be implicated? Look at your brother. Isn't that the case? It's fine if you throw a tantrum in the past, but how dare you be so impudent today? Rong Zhen's body trembled, and tears kept falling. Mother? What did I do wrong? I only said a few words. Aren't those few words enough? The Empress suddenly raised her voice, scaring Rong Zhen so much that she shivered, and fear and panic appeared in her eyes. Seeing her like this, how could the Empress's heart not ache? But today, she was determined to teach Rong Zhen proper manners. Otherwise, with her temperament, she would sooner or later bring harm to everyone. It's fine if something happens to you, but can you bear the responsibility if it harms your brother? Today, Rong Jin had embarrassed himself in front of everyone, and the Empress was both heartbroken and afraid. On the one hand, she was worried that this would be a huge blow to Rong Jin. On the other hand, she was worried that this would affect His Majesty's view of Rong Jin. If what happened today were to spread, Rong Jin's situation would become even more difficult in the future. Rong Zhen looked up in disbelief. Mother actually said that it was fine if something happened to me. Brother, ever since I was young, I've done a lot for brother. She sneered. Mother, even if I'm in the wrong today, is brother really completely innocent? He's useless and can't compare to Chu Luiyue, so Vice Admiral Mu didn't take a liking to him. He's useless. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 284. Chu Luiyue's eyes curved into crescents as she heaved a sigh of relief. However, she wasn't happy at all. Instead, she was confused. Mu Qinghe seemed to care a lot about the Daijing Yuan Meridian. Did he come to country Yaochen specifically to find a genius with the Daijing Yuan Meridian? However, in the Tianling dynasty, such people weren't common, but they weren't rare either. Why did he come all the way here to find them? Everyone looked at Chu Luiyue in shock. It took them a while to come back to their senses. What did this mean? Chu Luiyue really had the Daijing Yuan Meridian. Didn't that mean that she could follow Mu Qinghe to the Tianling dynasty? Mu Qinghe put away the stone. Chu Luiyue asked tentatively, Vice Admiral Mu, since it's proven that I have the Daijing Yuan Meridian, then what you said before, Mu Qinghe was expressionless. You can indeed follow me back since you have the Daijing Yuan Meridian. Chu Luiyue held her breath. She could clearly hear the sound of her heart beating fast. Don't be happy too early. Having the Daijing Yuan Meridian is just the beginning. There are other requirements. If you can't meet them, you won't be able to go. Mu Qinghe said calmly. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes. Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu. Luyu will do his best. She knew that things weren't that simple. However, this was still an opportunity. It was even more in line with her thoughts. Although she wanted to go back as soon as possible and let those people experience the pain she had experienced, she knew very well that now wasn't the best time. With her current strength, she would just be courting death if she went back and fought them head-on. Mu Qinghe grunted. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. Chu Luiwei heaved a sigh of relief, but the others had mixed feelings. Everyone present had come with hope, but the requirements for the Daijing Yuan Meridian were too high, and they could not fulfill them. In the end, it was Chu Luiwei who came out on top again. How could they be happy about this? Emperor Jianghu hesitated for a while, but he still carefully asked, Vice Admiral Mu, do you really only want people with the Daijing Yuan Meridian? Actually, there are some. Although they are not the Daijing Yuan Meridian, they are still very good. Why don't you pick some more? If they're all like him, then there's no need to say anything more. Mu Qinghe's gaze swept past Rong Jin. Rong Jin was even more embarrassed. As the crown prince, he had never experienced such a thing. Even when his father grounded him and took back many of his rights, he had never felt so humiliated. This was equivalent to giving him a few tight slaps in front of everyone. Emperor Jianghu didn't know how to reply at that moment. Not to mention Rong Jin, even he didn't dare to show any displeasure when someone said that to him. Hearing Mu Qinghe's words, he couldn't continue and could only shut his mouth awkwardly. The entire palace's atmosphere became even stranger and colder. However, Chu Luiwei was very calm as he calmly ate his food and ignored the surrounding gazes. Rong Jin clenched her teeth and hated Chu Luiwei for getting this rare opportunity one moment, and she was also annoyed at her previous rashness the next moment. After being reprimanded by Mu Qinghe, she originally felt very humiliated. However, when she saw that Mu Qinghe treated the others the same way, including Rong Jin, she didn't feel so angry anymore. When she gradually calmed down, she also felt that her previous actions were a little overboard. Who is Mu Qinghe? He's the Tianling dynasty's envoy. He's the high and mighty lieutenant. Even father has to give in to him, so what if I'm reprimanded by him? Besides, I'm still counting on Mu Qinghe to help me heal my body. Thinking of this, she gave the Empress a look. The Empress saw the urgency in Rong Jin's eyes and naturally knew what she meant. However, this made her even more frustrated. Does Rong Jin think that I don't want to ask Mu Qinghe for help? Why doesn't she know? Look at the situation now. First, it was the crown prince, then it was Rong Jin. This pair of siblings was reprimanded in front of so many people, and she lost all her face. If they really made Mu Qinghe unhappy, he could casually kill them with one finger. How could she speak now? Seeing that the Empress didn't move, Rong Jin couldn't help but feel anxious and even wanted to get up a few times. Luckily, the palace servant standing behind her had already received the Empress's signal and silently held her back. Rong Jin was very unhappy, but she didn't dare to really make a scene in this place, so she could only bear with it. At this point, something suddenly flew in from outside the door. Chu Luiwei took a look and was suddenly stunned. It was a green sparrow. It was only the size of a palm, and its entire body was green. However, its claws and eyes were red. Especially its pair of eyes, they were as bright as rubies and were very beautiful. This green sparrow flapped its wings and flew very quickly, but it didn't make any sound. Hence, when the people in the palace discovered it, it had already rushed to the center of the palace. Stop it! Rong Jin frowned and hollered. What are you doing? What kind of place is this? Can't even stop these random things. The guards outside rushed in one after another, but they couldn't say anything after hearing Rong Jin's scolding. The flying speed of this thing was simply too fast. They couldn't stop it in time. Your Highness, please calm down. We have important guests here today. This is my fiend. Mu Qinghe, who was sitting at the head of the table, suddenly spoke. Rong Jin's remaining words were suddenly stuck in his throat, and his entire body froze. His limbs were cold. Mu Qinghe waved his hands, and the green sparrow flew toward him. Silence reigned in the hall. The green sparrow landed in Mu Qinghe's hands. Mu Qinghe glanced at it and saw that there was a trace of blood under its wings. He knitted his brows slightly, and a cold light flashed across his eyes. You're injured? Who hurt you? The green sparrow moved its wings and covered the blood stains. Mu Qinghe knitted his brows even tighter. Hong Yao was a 7th-grade fiend. It was very strong and rarely lost. Yesterday, it was a little anxious for some reason, so he let it out. He didn't expect it to be injured. Who else in country Yaochen has such capabilities? Hong Yao bit the feathers on its wings, feeling wronged. Mu Qinghe said coldly, "Why didn't you say before? What did you promise before coming here? That you wouldn't cause any trouble. Are you obedient now?" Hong Yao didn't expect to be scolded even when it was injured, and it felt even more wronged. Its beautiful, ruby-like eyes didn't blink, but they quickly filled with tears, making it look very pitiful. Mu Qinghe suddenly sighed in his heart. Hong Yao has really been spoiled by that person. It feels wrong just by saying a few words. Hong Yao, Mu Qinghe's voice became stricter. Hong Yao suddenly turned around. Suddenly, it paused and looked at Chu Luiyue in a daze. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. The next moment he saw the small red sparrow flying toward him. Digression, Khan was so stuck that he wanted to die. His computer screen suddenly turned white again. The last chapter will be updated before midnight. I'm so unlucky today that I have nothing to say. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 285. News of what happened at the palace banquet quickly spread among the aristocratic families in the imperial capital. Chu Luiyue also became the topic of discussion. First, she took first place twice in the Qingjiao competition. Then, she was chosen to follow Mu Qinghe to the Tianling dynasty because of her Daijing Yuan meridian. In just a few days, Chu Luiyue became famous. She became the envy of everyone. Ordinary people might not know, but the important figures in the aristocratic families all knew what the Tianling dynasty meant. From now on, Chu Luiyue would have a meteoric rise and a bright future ahead of her. The palace banquet ended in the afternoon, but Chu Luiyue had already received many gifts at night. She didn't need to look to know that those were people who wanted to get close to her, so she rejected all of them. After returning to the academy, she even chose to enter Jianghu Tower to cultivate, regardless of the storm outside. At the Chu residence, Chu Xiao returned to the Chu residence with a gloomy face. The servants trembled in fear when they saw his expression and didn't dare to say anything. However, this situation was quickly changed. Since the afternoon, people kept asking to see him. And they were all asking for the same thing. What? Let Chu Ning and his daughter return to the Chu family. Hearing their suggestion, Chu Xiao exploded like gunpowder that had been ignited. That's impossible. Don't even think about it. Chu Ning and his daughter had already broken off all ties with the Chu family. Everyone in the imperial capital knew that they were at odds with each other. If they were to discuss this matter with them now, it would be equivalent to them admitting defeat. By then, the entire Chu family would become the laughingstock of the imperial capital. Chu Xiao felt uncomfortable every time he thought of that. He was determined not to agree. However, the members of the Chu family, who had always obeyed him, were also very determined this time. Great Elder, things are different now. The news that Chu Luiyue was chosen to go to the Tianling dynasty has already spread among the aristocratic families. Even if she had a huge conflict with us in the past, we are still family. The same blood flows in our bodies. Why can't we let it go? That's right. She's no longer the useless trash that she used to be. Needless to say, her achievements in the future will definitely be great. This is also a great opportunity for the Chu family. Grand Elder, it's not as if we don't have your concerns. However, if we continue to fight with them, we'll only be at a disadvantage. After today, how many people in the imperial capital will want to get close to Chu Luiyue? She's still from the family? As long as we take the initiative to ask for peace, she will definitely give us face. Listening to their hopeful words one after another, Chu Xiao was extremely irritated. He abruptly interrupted them and shouted angrily, "Let's go! Don't you know what kind of Chu Luiyue? If you ask her for peace now, you're just asking for your own humiliation." Everyone looked at each other in dismay, feeling a little troubled. In fact, how could they not know this point? But wasn't there no other way? Could it be that he could only watch helplessly as such a great opportunity was missed? Compared to the Tianling dynasty, what was this little bit of face? As long as they could repair their relationship with Chu Luiyue, they could have whatever they wanted in the future. Great Elder, we all know that you don't like Chu Luiyue. However, shouldn't you think about the entire Chu family now? Third Elder suddenly spoke, his tone slightly cold. Chu Zhao's expression turned stern. What do you mean? The third Elder smiled. Nothing. We all know why Chu Luiyue left the Chu family. To be honest, it's because of you. It's not a big deal if you're safe. However, Chu Luiyue is different now. We're in a favorable position. Wouldn't it be a pity if we give up just like that? The others nodded. Chu Ning and his daughter are not unreasonable people. As long as we sincerely apologize, I believe we can salvage the situation. Chu Xiao scolded angrily. You're crazy. Great Elder, we're not crazy. This is our only choice now. Third Elder was not frightened by Chu Zhao's anger at all, and his expression did not change. Our Chu family has been declining all these years, and our situation is not good. It wasn't easy to nurture Chu Xianmin, but she's basically useless now. Now that we finally have a top talent like Chu Luiyue, we have no reason not to seize the opportunity, right? No matter what, she's someone that Vice Admiral Mu thinks highly of. What's wrong with us lowering our heads? When she becomes successful in the future, it'll be many times harder for us to do all this. The third Elder's words immediately drew everyone's agreement. Everyone discussed fervently, implying that they hoped Chu Xiao would be the representative to apologize to Chu Ning and his daughter and invite them back to the Chu family. Chu Xiao was annoyed. Say whatever you want. If you want to build a relationship with Chu Luiyue, go ahead. In any case, this old man will definitely not go. Third Elder smiled faintly. Great Elder, you're so stubborn. I wonder what the head of the family will think when he comes out and finds out about this? Chu Zhao's expression froze. He had almost forgotten about this. The head of the family had been in seclusion for too long, and he had already regarded himself as the head of the Chu family. Although Third Elder's words were unpleasant, they were not without reason. He could ignore the others, but not the head of the family. It would be hard for him to explain himself then. After hesitating for a long time, Chu Zhao's expression changed several times before he finally agreed. Give Chu Luiyue? Forget it. Give Chu Ning an invitation and say that we have something to discuss with him. Chu Luiyue entered Jianghu Tower again. As she had already broken through to stage 2, she easily ascended to the second floor this time. The Qingjiao competition had just ended, so not many students came to Jianghu Tower. Chu Luiyue simply walked around the second floor and realized that there wasn't much of a difference here other than having a stronger force. She randomly found a room and started cultivating. Not long after she sat down, Chu Luiyue heard a sharp and hoarse roar. That sound came closer and closer, and it gradually became clearer. The powerful suppression also became more and more terrifying. Chu Luiyue even felt as if the blood in her body had solidified. Screech. That screech seemed to be right beside her ear, and it almost pierced her eardrums. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. But this time, she suddenly saw a pair of scarlet and sharp eyes in front of her. That pair of eyes was burning with raging flames. They covered the sky and covered the earth. Digression, I sincerely apologize to everyone. I had been running around outside today, and then I had to entertain my friends at night. I thought that I would come back to write after a simple meal, but I didn't expect that there would be so many delays, and I couldn't abandon my friends and come back alone. I feel very guilty. I'll update later. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 286. Hong Yao tilted its head to one side, making it clear that it didn't want to talk to Mu Qinghe. Mu Qinghe stared at Hong Yao. Your temper is getting worse and worse. Hong Yao glared at her with tears in its eyes. When she was here before, she never dared to treat it like this. Only a short time had passed, but its life was getting worse and worse. It had suffered enough in the past year. Mu Qinghe was such a stupid master. The more Hong Yao thought about it, the angrier it became. It couldn't wait to go back and find Chu Luiyue. But it knew that Mu Qinghe would definitely not agree. Besides, that guy was still here. Its fur had been plucked off. Bang! Hong Yao was so angry that it simply lay straight on the ground. I won't go. I can't live like this. Mu Qinghe's eyes twitched. It's useless for you to throw a tantrum. Hong Yao didn't move. It was determined not to go with him. It might as well just let it die. Thinking of how it was injured by a beast that had been imprisoned for many years when it went out yesterday, Hong Yao felt ashamed. And today, it was treated like this by Mu Qinghe. It couldn't live like this. Mu Qinghe closed his eyes hard and tried to control his emotions, lest he accidentally killed his demonic beast. Who hurt you? If you are willing to tell me, I can help you take revenge. Hong Yao's eyes moved, but its body was still tense. It thought for a while and was in a dilemma. You can even get injured in such a place. It seems that you haven't been diligent in cultivation during this period of time. Mu Qinghe's following words successfully made Hong Yao give up the idea of asking him for help. A green flame ignited on its body, burning away the remaining bloodstains. Mu Qinghe raised his eyebrows and was a little surprised. Hong Yao had always liked to make trouble outside and then let him clean up the mess. He didn't expect it to be so courageous today. Since you don't want to tell me, I'll ask another question. Mu Qinghe's eyes were as sharp as a substance. He stared at Hong Yao, as if he wanted to see through it. Just now in the main hall, you, Vice Admiral Mu. Before Mu Qinghe could finish her sentence, she was suddenly interrupted by a clear female voice. He turned around and saw that it was Chu Luiyue. What a coincidence! Mu Qinghe's expression changed, and she glanced at Hong Yao. The red demon lying on the ground suddenly froze. It's over. He had been seen. This was too embarrassing. Without thinking, it flew up from the ground and rushed up. Then, it circled around Mu Qinghe, not forgetting to dive down to the ground in the middle, pretending that it was also around Mu Qinghe. From afar, it looked like a jubilant butterfly. Mu Qinghe was speechless. Chu Luiyue walked closer and asked in a surprised tone. Vice Admiral Mu, your magic beast looks really lively. Yes, he was still as good as ever. His ability to play dead and act shamelessly was still the same as before. Mu Qinghe was speechless. Hong Yao, who was flying excitedly, suddenly felt embarrassed. For a moment, it didn't know whether it should continue to fly. It staggered and almost fell from the air. In the end, it could only lower its head and accept its fate. What's the matter? Mu Qinghe coughed, but there was still no expression on her face. Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. There is one thing I want to ask you for help with. I don't know if you are willing to agree. Say it. According to Mu Qinghe's character, she was never interested in this kind of thing. If it was before today, he would definitely not say a word when Chu Luiyue talked to him like this. But thinking of Hong Yao's reaction to her, Mu Qinghe felt that maybe she should find an opportunity to get to know Chu Luiyue more. Chu Luiyue bowed. I have a friend whose mother has been ill for many years. Her condition has worsened recently. I wonder if Vice Admiral Mu can help? Lu Yu will definitely be very grateful. Mu Qinghe frowned. Your friend? Chu Luiyue nodded. Mu Hongyu. She is country Yao Chen's Princess Yong. Mu Qinghe didn't care if Mu Hongyu was a princess or not. Even if it was Emperor Juan, he might not be willing to help. However, Hong Yao and you hit it off very well. For its sake, I can help you. Chu Luiyue looked surprised and looked at Hong Yao. Then I really have to thank Hong Yao. Her red lips moved slightly as she softly called out its name. She was the one who named Hong Yao. Back then, when Mu Qinghe was hunting fiends, she coincidentally obtained Hong Yao, but she didn't know what to call it. Chu Luiyue thought that it was a green sparrow, and Mu Qinghe also had the word Qing in her name. Thus, they were considered to be fated. Hence, he purposely gave it the opposite name, Hong Yao. Now, when he called out this name again, things had changed. Hong Yao was stunned and instinctively wanted to fly toward Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue glanced at it. The human and fiend looked at each other, and undercurrents surged. Hong Yao suddenly paused. I don't seem to want to now. It stared at Chu Luiyue and couldn't wait to run over and complain to Mu Qinghe. Dumpling squatted on Chu Luiyue's shoulder and stared at it warily. Hong Yao felt a dull pain at the spot where the feathers were plucked off. After hesitating for a long time, it finally didn't go over and could only bury its head under its wings. No one saw the tears rolling down its cheeks, all of them falling into its feathers. After a while, its wings were wet. Seeing it like this, Chu Luiyue felt very sorry for it. Hong Yao had always been arrogant and often made a lot of trouble. But when it was really sad, it would only bury its head in its wings and cry, just like now. How could she not want to hug Hong Yao? Since her rebirth, everything she thought of in her previous life was like a dream. All the true feelings were fake, and all the loyalty was betrayal. In the end, Hong Yao was the only one who missed her. Seeing Hong Yao like this, she felt that the pain that went deep into her bones was a little comforted. But now was not a good time. Mu Qinghe said, "I will stay here for a while. Let her come here. I will send a celestial physician to treat her." As the deputy general of the Black Cavalry, he had great power. It was not difficult for him to mobilize a few celestial physicians. Chu Luiyue looked away with a polite and eager smile on her face. "Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu." After saying that, she asked hesitantly, "But Vice Admiral Mu means that you won't leave immediately? Didn't he come here to pick people with the Daijing Yuan Meridian? Apart from that, was there something else?" Mu Qinghe replied with a faint "thing," but didn't say anything else. Chu Luiyue knew that she wasn't qualified to ask so much now, so she didn't say anything and just curtsied. "In that case, Luyu won't waste your time. I'll take my leave first." After saying that, she took a step back and turned to leave. "So," Mu Qinghe suddenly said. Chu Luiyue stopped in her tracks, turned around, and asked with a smile, "Vice Admiral Mu, is there anything else?" "Digression, when I go out today, it will probably be very late. Don't wait during the day. Let's read it together at night. So how much do you owe now?" Woo, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 287. Dumpling nodded vigorously. Chu Luiyue was speechless. This was already the 4th floor, and only Stage 4 warriors could come up here. Looking around, it was empty. In the entire academy, there were less than 10 students who had reached Stage 4. And there were no Stage 5 warriors. Not a single one. Chu Ning was also a Stage 5 warrior. Cultivators who could reach this level could be considered powerful in the entire country Yaochen. It was obvious that there shouldn't be anyone above the 5th floor. Now it was hard to figure out how Tuanzi could pass through the barrier of the floor so easily. Chu Luiyue was most worried about something else. If they came up so quietly, would they alert Elder Wei Yun, who was guarding Jiuyou Tower? Jiuyou Tower was very important to Tianlu Academy. If they really caused a commotion and were discovered, it would be difficult for her to explain herself. Seeing that Chu Luiyue was standing there in deep thought and didn't seem to have any intention of following her, Dumpling couldn't wait any longer and turned around, heading straight for the 5th floor. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly as she watched Dumpling fly to the barrier on the 5th floor. Although there was still a distance between them, Chu Luiyue could clearly feel the suppression above. It was much stronger than the one on the 4th floor. Perhaps the suppression on the 5th floor could stop Dumpling? If Jiuyou Tower was really so easy to get into, it wouldn't make sense, right? Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue calmed down a little as she stood on the spot and watched quietly. However, her fantasy was shattered very quickly. That strong barrier didn't stop Dumpling at all. It passed through it easily as if it was entering an uninhabited land. Seeing Dumpling happily wagging her tail at her, Chu Luiyue was silent for a while. She seemed to have underestimated this blood ferret that she had casually picked up. After hesitating for a long time, Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and finally decided to follow Dumpling up. Since they had already come this far, she wanted to see what it was that had attracted Dumpling. In fact, there was another thing she wanted to clarify. When she first came to Jiuyou Tower and pushed the door open, the ferocious beasts carved on the door seemed to have come alive. Ever since she started cultivating here, she had heard that strange sound more than once. Although Chu Luiyue didn't know what kind of magical beast was imprisoned under Jiuyou Tower, she was certain that the magical beast was targeting her. Thinking of this, she made up her mind and stretched out her hand in front of the barrier. Dumpling immediately hugged her hand happily and easily crossed the barrier with her. Looking at the lively Dumpling and his unharmed body, Chu Luiyue pursed his lips and looked up. The staircase spiraled up to the top. However, each layer of barriers was like layers of fog, concealing everything and making it impossible to see anything clearly. A question suddenly flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind. Since only Stage 5 warriors could go up to the 5th level, did the top few levels have the same rules? For example, only Stage 7 warriors could go up to the 7th level? However, there were no cultivators outside Heaven's Canopy who could break through to this level. If that was the case, then what was the point of the top few levels of Jiuyou Tower? One had to know that in the entire country Yaochen, the strongest was only a Stage 5 warrior. There wasn't even a Stage 6 warrior. In other words, with Jiuyou Tower here, everyone could only go up to the 5th level at most. Who placed such a powerful Jiuyou Tower here? Chu Luiyue recalled that Bai Chen had specially introduced Jiuyou Tower when she was in the academy. However, at that time, he only mentioned that the pit of heavenly origins was under Jiuyou Tower, so the density of force in the tower was much better than the outside world. However, he didn't say anything else. A large part of the reason why Chu Luiyue wanted to enter Tianlu Academy was because of Jiuyou Tower. However, she now felt that there were too many secrets buried in Jiuyou Tower. She looked at Dumpling. Shall we continue? When Chu Luiyue entered Jiuyou Tower and broke through the 5th barrier, Rong Xiu had just returned to Yifeng Courtyard from Prince Li's mansion. Yan Qing followed closely behind and quickly reported the day's events to Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu lay down on the rattan chair. His expression was calm, and no one could tell if he was happy or angry. Has the time been set? Yan Qing bowed. Not yet. From what Vice Admiral Mu said, it seems like he will be staying here for a while. He also seems to be planning to test Miss Lu Yu again. He will only bring Miss Lu Yu to the Tianling dynasty after she passes all of them. Rong Xiu's lips curled into a faint smile. Of course, he won't go back immediately. Mu Qinghe came here because she had other important matters to attend to. You said that she was the one who mentioned that she had a Daijing Yuan meridian? Rong Xiu asked calmly. Yan Qing bowed and replied respectfully, yes. Rong Xiu remained silent for a while. He crossed his fingers, and his eyes darkened slightly. It seems like she really wants to go. Yan Qing sensed that something was wrong with her master's aura. She hesitated for a while and said, to the people of country Yaochen, it's a great opportunity to go to the Tianling dynasty. It's reasonable for Miss Lu Yu to want to go. Besides, Miss Lu Yu is very talented. It's a pity for her to stay here. Rong Xiu closed his eyes gently. Of course, he knew this. However, he was more concerned about something else. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and looked in the direction of Jiuyou Tower. Yan Qing was shocked. Master, what's wrong? Rong Xiu frowned slightly. Someone barged into the 6th floor of Jiuyou Tower. Yan Qing was shocked. Wasn't the 6th floor of Jiuyou Tower only accessible to Stage 6 warriors? No one in the entire Imperial City could do it, let alone Tianlu Academy, right? Master, could it be those? Rong Xiu raised his hand and narrowed his eyes before Yan Qing could finish her sentence. No. He found that aura very familiar. It's her. His expression changed slightly, and he immediately rushed toward Jiuyou Tower. Why did she enter Jiuyou Tower at this time? On the other side, Chu Luiyue looked back and still couldn't believe that she had reached the 6th floor just like that. With Dumpling leading the way, she didn't encounter any obstacles. If she hadn't experienced it herself, Chu Luiyue wouldn't have believed that she could reach the top few floors of Jiuyou Tower in such a way. She looked around and saw that there was no one around. The space here was much smaller than the 1st floor, but the force was more concentrated. If she cultivated here, she would definitely get twice the result with half the effort. However, at the same time, the rich force was mixed with all kinds of impurities, which made people flinch. However, she still couldn't find any trace of the fiend here. Chu Luiwe took a deep breath and looked up. Could it be even higher up? Digression, I'll update slowly in the afternoon after eating. Love mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 288. Chu Luiwe looked at Dumpling. Dumpling, are you going to stop? This is already the 6th floor. It was obvious that only Stage 7 warriors could go further up. Dumpling blinked and looked up again, seemingly puzzled by Chu Luiwe's question. There was nothing here, so of course they had to continue going up. Chu Luiwe held her breath for a moment and finally said, "Okay, if you can go up, I'll go with you." Tuanzi wagged its tail happily and turned around, intending to go to the 7th floor. Chu Luiwe looked down and saw that there seemed to be no end to the spiral staircase. Suddenly, her gaze froze and she looked at her feet. There was actually a drop of dried blood there. As it was dark red and fell at the edge, she didn't see it when she came up from below. This was the 6th level. Who would be able to come here and leave behind a trail of blood? She bent down and took a closer look, frowning slightly. According to her experience, this drop of blood seemed to have been left not long ago. It was very likely that it was left in the past 2 days. Who could it be? Chu Luiwe stretched out her hand, wiped the blood gently, and looked at it carefully. A familiar aura hit her in the face. She was stunned. These seemed to be. She immediately looked around the drop of blood again. After searching carefully, she finally saw a green feather in an inconspicuous corner. She immediately recognized that it was Hong Yao's feather with just one look. Hong Yao has been here? Chu Luiwe was shocked, and then she suddenly remembered that when she saw Hong Yao previously, there was blood under its wings. It seemed to be injured. At that time, she was immersed in the shock that Hong Yao actually recognized her, so she didn't pay attention to it. Now that she thought about it, it was indeed strange. As a 7th grade fiend, Hong Yao was very powerful. Being able to injure it showed that the other party wasn't easy to deal with. More importantly, there shouldn't be such an existence in country Yao Chen. From the looks of it, Hong Yao had barged into Jiuyou Tower and was injured here. Chu Luiwe couldn't help but think of that ferocious magical beast. Seeing that Chu Luiwe didn't follow her, Dumpling chased after her. When it saw the green feather in Chu Luiwe's hand, a look of disdain flashed across its eyes. As expected, he was useless. He was actually injured here. Chu Luiwe glanced at it. Dumpling, Hong Yao is injured here. Are you sure you want to continue? Even Hong Yao had suffered a loss, so she and Dumpling might not be a match for him. Hearing this, Dumpling's face immediately scrunched up. How could that green sparrow compare to it? Chu Luiwe saw that it was very stubborn, so she couldn't help but sigh. If you run into trouble later, I can't help you. It might even become a burden to her. Dumpling stepped forward angrily and threw away the green feather. Then, it hugged Chu Luiwe's hand and walked up. She had made up her mind. Chu Luiwe had no choice but to secretly take out the crystal barrier, ready to deal with any sudden situations. The human and beast continued to walk toward the 7th floor. Chu Luiwe already felt as if something heavy was pressing down on her body, and every step she took was extremely heavy. If not for Dumpling, she probably wouldn't have been able to continue. Finally, the two of them reached the barrier on the 7th floor. Unlike the transparent barriers from before, the one in front of him was actually a bright silver. The brilliance flowed, and it looked as brilliant as the galaxy. However, Chu Luiwe was not in the mood to admire it at this moment. She stood stiffly in front of the barrier, and the blood in her body seemed to have solidified. Only her heart was beating wildly. She took a deep breath, and then slowly stretched out her hand and reached forward. Dumpling sat on the back of her hand, and its round eyes were wide open, looking excitedly and expectantly at the flickering silver barrier in front of it. Chu Luiwe could clearly see her fingers slowly sinking into the silver barrier. The silver barrier was solid, and Chu Luiwe could even clearly feel the strong resistance. This time, it was as if she had plunged into a quagmire. Soon, Chu Luiwe felt as if there was a force crazily dragging her, trying to pull her in. Her heart trembled, and she subconsciously tried to pull her hand out. However, the force also grew rapidly, and it swallowed even more of her hand. Very quickly, the flowing light had already pulled her entire hand into it. Dumpling's body was halfway in. At this moment, a ball of black karmic fire suddenly rushed out of the barrier. A burning pain suddenly assaulted him. Chu Luiwei immediately wanted to retreat. But at this moment, she was already trapped within the silver barrier. She could not move. In an instant, the black karmic fire had spread to Chu Luiwei's body and surrounded her. Chu Luiwei immediately threw out the crystal barrier. However, she soon realized that the crystal barrier did not have any effect. Because one of her hands had sunk into the silver barrier, the crystal barrier could not pass through the barrier and could not completely protect her. Helpless, she could only put away the crystal barrier and began to think of other ways. The blazing flames made her feel as if her entire body was burning. She could even smell something burning. However, at this moment, Dumpling's body had been completely swallowed by the flowing light. Chu Luiwei realized that her hand, which had been swallowed by the barrier, was completely numb and had lost all feeling. Therefore, at this moment, she had lost all sense of Dumpling. Dumpling? Chu Luiwei raised her voice and shouted. However, Dumpling did not respond. At this moment, the black karmic fire had completely spread over the entire barrier. Chu Luiwei stood there as if she was in hell. Just as she was feeling extremely anxious, she suddenly heard a clear sound. Kacha! Her heart jumped, and she immediately focused her gaze. She saw that the black karmic fire in front of her had suddenly encountered something terrifying and was rapidly retreating from the center. A crack had appeared on the barrier that was flickering with light. Chu Luiwei's brows furrowed, and in the next moment, she saw that the crack had expanded again. Crash! The barrier shattered. A small claw suddenly reached out from within. It was Dumpling. Chu Luiwei's heart relaxed. Then she saw Dumpling grab the edge of the shattered barrier and forcefully break it. Kacha! A bright and colorful barrier was actually broken like a piece of broken ice by it. Chu Luiwei suddenly had a premonition. Indeed, in the next moment, she heard the crisp sound of something being bitten. Kacha! Kacha kacha! Gulp! Through the hole in the middle, Chu Luiwei could clearly see Dumpling stuffing the last bit of the barrier into her mouth, chewing and swallowing. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 289. This scene was all too familiar. However, Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat uncontrollably when she saw it. How could Dumpling eat this? Previously, when it ate Heng Jingshua's force, she thought it was already shocking enough. She did not expect it to be able to eat a barrier that was full of pressure so easily. This was not an osmanthus cake. Because she was too shocked, Chu Luiwei could not say a word for a while. She could only watch in a daze as Dumpling broke off another piece and put it into its mouth. Chu Luiwei even saw that there was still a black karmic fire on the barrier that had yet to burn. However, Dumpling did not seem to care at all. Because it was careless, a strand of its beard was burned off. Fortunately, it changed its angle in time and successfully put the thing into its mouth and ate it happily. The black karmic fire around it was still burning wildly, but Chu Luiwei suddenly felt that this thing did not seem to be so powerful. No matter how strong it was, wasn't it still eaten by Dumpling? Looking at Dumpling diligently breaking off another piece, the corner of her eyes twitched. If other people saw this scene, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop. Dumpling, is it delicious? In the end, she could not help but ask. Dumpling heard her and stopped. It looked at her with bright eyes and nodded furiously. Delicious. Super delicious. It was much better than Heng Jingshua's Moon Devourer. Compared to this, what it ate before was rubbish. Chu Luiwei was shocked by its enthusiastic reaction, and the corner of her eyes twitched uncontrollably. So what exactly did she bring back? After the previous few incidents, Chu Luiwei had already guessed that Dumpling was not an ordinary blood ferret. It was even different from other magical beasts. She had never heard of any magical beast that consumed origin power as food. She did not notice it before, but later she realized that Dumpling did not seem to like to eat. What it loved the most was origin power, and it was the kind that came in large clumps. Just like this silver barrier. This thing was also condensed from origin power and contained an extremely powerful suppressive might. Chu Luiwei had no doubt that this barrier could indeed stop cultivators below rank 7. Therefore, Dumpling's behavior now looked even more strange. As Dumpling ate crazily, the hole in the barrier grew bigger and bigger. The black karmic fire that was spreading wantonly seemed to have sensed that something was wrong and retreated. However, Dumpling was even faster. She devoured the flaming barrier piece by piece. Chu Luiwei watched quietly, the waves in his heart unable to calm down for a long time. That originally extremely tall silver barrier was quickly reduced to rubble. In the end, it was completely destroyed by Dumpling. As for the hand that had been swallowed, it had been freed at some point. After finishing the last bite, Dumpling finally rubbed her round belly and burped in satisfaction. Burp. Chu Luiwei was speechless. If Heng Jingchua could see the scene, he should be able to rest in peace. In this world, how many people's origin power could receive the same treatment as this powerful barrier? From the looks of it, Dumpling was willing to swallow that ball of origin power because she was compromising. Chu Luiwei looked at the broken barrier in front of him and did not recover for a long time. After a while, he looked at Dumpling faintly. Dumpling, tell me honestly, did you come here just to eat this? Dumpling suddenly sneezed. Achoo! Chu Luiwei was speechless. She seemed to be guilty? Chu Luiwei held his forehead helplessly. The 7th level's barrier was eaten by Dumpling just like that. This matter would definitely attract the attention of the elders in the academy. It might not even take long for them to rush over. Of course, whether or not they could reach this level was another matter. But if others found out, she felt that she really could not explain it. Did she have to tell everyone that she was brought up by Dumpling and that it was also the one who ate this barrier? Dumpling saw that Chu Luiwei seemed to be very troubled, so it quickly flew over and threw itself into her arms, rubbing against her ingratiatingly. Chu Luiwei's neck tickled and she could not help but laugh. She pulled Dumpling down, annoyed and amused. Don't act cute. Tell me, what should we do now? How was she going to explain such a big hole? Dumpling blinked and thought for a long time. Then, it stretched out its paw and pointed upwards. Chu Luiwei's eyebrows twitched violently, and an even more ominous premonition attacked her heart. You still want to go up? Dumpling heard a hint of threat in her voice and nodded timidly. How far were they? If they did not go up, wouldn't they have made this trip in vain? Chu Luiwei's hands trembled slightly, and she kept chanting in her heart. This is my fiend. If I kill it, it will be gone. This is my fiend. If I kill it, it will be gone. This is my fiend. But I don't want to die. Chu Luiwei finally could not hold it in anymore and pinched its chubby cheeks harshly. Dumpling, do you know that your master only has one life? If it's gone just like that, it will really be gone. Tuanzi blinked its eyes and then clasped its paws together. It bowed obediently with its hands folded in front, looking eager to please. Chu Luiwei closed her eyes. Go! When the 7th level's barrier was eaten by Tuanzi, Elder Wei Yun, who was dozing off in his chair outside Jiuyo Tower, suddenly opened his eyes. He looked up at Jiuyo Tower in shock. This commotion was not right. He had been guarding Jiuyo Tower for many years, but he had never felt such a commotion. For the past half a year, Jiuyo Tower had some strange movements from time to time, but it had always been within their control. Thus, even the dean did not take it to heart. But now, boom! The door of Jiuyo Tower suddenly opened. Several figures were thrown out one after another by a powerful force. They were the students who were cultivating in Jiuyo Tower. Cries of surprise were incessant. Clearly, these people had not realized what had happened. Some of them could not withstand the impact of this force and even vomited blood. They were extremely pathetic. Elder Wei Yun's heart was in his mouth. For so many years, such a situation had never happened in Jiuyo Tower. He abruptly stood up and slapped the black jade stone in front of him without any hesitation. A bright light pillar shot up to the sky. Jianghu Tower has changed. Other than teachers and elders, all students retreat. Elder Wei Yun shouted sternly. His voice spread far and wide. When the students who were chased out of Jianghu Tower heard this, they were all shocked and hurriedly retreated. At the same time, everyone else in the college also saw the light pillar. Level 1 alert. What happened in Jianghu Tower? Digression, I'm going out tonight. I don't know when the 5th watch will be updated. Everyone don't wait. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 290. Rong Xiu, who was walking toward Jianghu Tower, frowned when he saw the light pillar. He was still a step too late. She had already reached the 7th floor. He quickened his pace and walked forward. Yan Qing followed behind. She was also shocked when she saw the commotion and didn't dare to say a word. Miss Lu Yu is too daring. She actually caused such a huge commotion in Jianghu Tower. The two of them walked forward and soon met the students who were retreating. Prince Li? The girls were shocked when they saw Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu was expressionless as he lightly nodded and continued walking forward. Prince Li, it's dangerous ahead. The girls looked at each other and hurriedly rushed in front of Rong Xiu, wanting to stop him. Rong Xiu quietly looked at the few of them. His expression was calm to the extreme, but those women felt a chill run up from the soles of their feet, rushing straight to their heads. Their joy and excitement from meeting Rong Xiu quickly faded. They looked at each other, and their faces turned pale. This Prince Li's aura is not ordinary. Yan Qing immediately said, Prince Li has something important to do. His Highness has important matters to attend to, so please do not delay. The girls came back to their senses and hurriedly stepped aside. Rong Xiu walked forward and didn't even look at her. The girls hesitated for a while and couldn't help but shout, Prince Li, Jianghu Tower has changed. It's the most dangerous time for you to go there now. Elder Wei Yun has already ordered everyone to evacuate. It's better if you don't go. Rong Xiu was unmoved and continued walking forward. Yan Qing felt helpless. Can't these people tell that Master has made up his mind to go? If they obstruct him and delay his matters, it would be dangerous for them. Yan Qing turned around and scanned the girls. Prince Li knows what he's doing. The women's faces turned even paler, and they didn't dare to say anything more. Gradually, more and more students began to evacuate. Everyone was moving away from Jianghu Tower, and only Rong Xiu went against the flow. Many people were surprised to see him. Why did the frail Prince Li come here at this time? And it looks a little different from before. Some people couldn't help but remind her, but Yan Qing blocked them all. Rong Xiu finally arrived in front of Jianghu Tower. Elder Wei Yun was anxiously looking at Jianghu Tower when he unintentionally turned his head and saw Rong Xiu walking over. His brows were tightly knitted together. Rong Xiu, why are you here at this time? Now that all the students had been evacuated, the elders and teachers would come to deal with it. You should leave as soon as possible. There are still people inside. Rong Xiu interrupted him. Elder Wei Yun was stunned. Just as he was about to ask who it was, his heart suddenly lit up. And Chu Luiyue. He had actually almost forgotten about her. He remembered that when she came in the afternoon, he even congratulated her. Thinking back, Chu Luiyue wasn't among the students who came out just now. She was still inside. How did this happen? Jianghu Tower changed, and all the students were expelled. Why is Chu Luiyue the only one left? Elder Wei Yun also became nervous. Chu Luiyue had taken first place twice in the Qingjiao competition just now. She was undoubtedly the top genius in their academy. If anything happened to her, they wouldn't be able to bear the loss. Rong Xiu looked up at Jianghu Tower. I'll go in and bring her out. Elder Wei Yun gritted his teeth and immediately rushed in. But at this moment, Jianghu Tower's door slammed shut with a bang. It blocked Elder Wei Yun outside. Elder Wei Yun widened his eyes. This, isn't Chu Luiyue completely trapped in Jianghu Tower? He tried to open the door, but it didn't budge at all. Elder Wei Yun then realized that the situation was more serious than he had imagined. What's going on? Just as he was feeling extremely anxious, Sun Zhongyan and the rest finally arrived. Elder Wei Yun quickly explained the situation to them. There were no signs when Jiuyou Tower changed. I don't know what's going on. The door can't be open now. Sun Zhongyan frowned and asked. Is there anyone inside? Elder Wei Yun swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Chu Luiwei is still inside. What? Sun Zhongyan was shocked and immediately looked at Jiuyou Tower with a frown. Then he crossed his arms in front of him. Rays of light intertwined, and a Xian formation quickly appeared. At the same time, spots of starlight appeared around Jiuyou Tower. That was the Xian formation set up on Jiuyou Tower. Sun Zhongyan looked at the Xian formation in front of him carefully. That's not right. There's no trace of her in Jiuyou Tower. This Xian formation was connected to Jiuyou Tower. Even if they couldn't enter, they could see something from the Xian formation. Sun Zhongyan looked at it for a while, but he couldn't sense Chu Liuyue's presence. Elder Wei Yun was puzzled. Impossible. She went in the afternoon, and all the other students came out together. She was the only one who didn't come out. She should still be inside. Sun Zhongyan held his breath and checked the Xian formation again. He still shook his head. Still nothing. Everyone looked at each other and fell silent. This situation was too strange. Elder Wei Yun anxiously paced around in circles. Why can't we find her? She's clearly inside. Rong Xiu suddenly said. Elder Sun, which level can your Xian formation see? Sun Zhongyan was stunned and instinctively replied. 5 levels. This Xian formation has been with Jiuyou Tower for many years, and it has always been able to see 5 levels. You mean? A ridiculous thought flashed across Sun Zhongyan's mind. Could it be that Chu Luiwei isn't on the 5 levels below? That's impossible. Sun Zhongyan blurted out. No one in Tianlu Academy has ever been able to go above the 5th level. How could she? Halfway through his words, his voice abruptly stopped. Other than this explanation, he couldn't find any other answers. Also, Jiuyou Tower's sudden change seemed very wrong. Everyone fell into dead silence. Suddenly, a scream came from the crowd. That door. Everyone looked over, and they were all shocked. They saw that the engraved lines on Jiuyou Tower's door suddenly jumped. In the blink of an eye, it turned into black karmic fire. It burned fiercely. How could this be? Sun Zhongyan opened his eyes wide and muttered in disbelief. While everyone was still in shock, the fire had already spread rapidly. In an instant, the entire first level of Jiuyou Tower was surrounded by the black karmic fire. An extremely ferocious roar suddenly sounded from Jiuyou Tower. It reverberated through the heavens. Digression, I rushed it out with all my might. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 291. Everyone was horrified. What is that? Why were there cries of fiends coming from Jiuyou Tower? Only Sun Zhongyan was frowning, and his wrinkled face was scrunched up. All Xian masters, listen up. Activate the Locking Heaven formation. Everyone else, evacuate immediately. Once those words were spoken, everyone looked at Sun Zhongyan in shock. The Locking Heaven formation was the sealing formation of Jiuyou Tower, and it had never been activated for thousands of years. Now, no one knew what would happen after the Locking Heaven formation was activated. Elder Sun, can't the Locking Heaven formation only be activated by the president? Bai Chen asked hurriedly. Sun Zhongyan's face was solemn. I've already informed Uncle Master. I hope he can come out of seclusion as soon as possible. But Jiuyou Tower has changed, and the situation is critical. We can't delay. We have to activate the Locking Heaven formation immediately. Uncle Master has already entrusted the Locking Heaven formation to me, so I can activate it too. As he spoke, he flipped his wrist, and a silver needle appeared in his palm. At first glance, the silver needle looked no different from an ordinary silver needle. But if one looked closer, they would see exquisite patterns engraved on it. In fact, The patterns on it were exactly the same as the patterns on Jiuyou Tower's door. Hearing Sun Zhongyan's words, everyone knew that this was the only way now. No one knew when the president would come, but Jiuyou Tower's situation couldn't wait any longer. Seeing the silver needle in Sun Zhongyan's hand, everyone felt more at ease. Elder Sun, please give us your orders. Sun Zhongyan rose into the air. He threw the silver needle in his hand. The silver needle grew in the wind and rapidly expanded to the size of a person's arm. From afar, it looked like a silver pestle. Then, the silver pestle landed right above Jiuyou Tower. It spun rapidly. Locking Heaven Formation, activate. Sun Zhongyan shouted, and countless silver lights flew out of his hand. They all poured into the silver pestle. The next moment, a buzzing sound was heard. The patterns on the silver pestle suddenly lit up. Swoosh! A silver dot of light flew out and landed in a certain location. Sun Zhongyan said, Bai Chen. Chi-san. Without saying a word, Bai Chen immediately flew over and stood on top of the star. Swoosh! A second silver light quickly appeared and flew to the other side. Wen Yan. Menchi. Chen Shao. Donglu. Qi Gao. Basi. Sun Zhongyan quickly gave the order, and all the Xian masters moved out. A huge Xian formation quickly appeared in the sky above Jiuyou Tower. Countless silver lines flew out from the silver pestle and intertwined with each other. Starlight flickered on them and spread out like stars on a chessboard. All the mystic cultivators also spread out and prepared to attack. The Heaven Ceiling Formation was a level 6 Xian formation, and no Xian master in the academy could activate it alone. Therefore, they could only work together. When everyone was in position, Sun Zhongyan shouted in a deep voice, Activate! As soon as he said that, all the Xian cultivators moved at the same time and poured their origin power into the starlight beneath their feet. Streams of light flew out and flowed along the huge interweaving lines in the air. They were all gathered in the silver pestle. A vast pressure descended. Above Jiuyou Tower, the locking sky formation was activated. Below Jiuyou Tower, the other teachers had already begun to evacuate. At a time like this, the only thing they could do was to ensure the safety of everyone in the academy. Rong Xiu. Let's go. Elder Wei Yun saw that Rong Xiu was still standing at the same spot and thought that he hadn't reacted yet, so he hurriedly advised him. It's very dangerous here. You can't stay here. Given Jiuyou Tower's current situation, no one could say for sure what would happen. The Heaven Ceiling Formation had already been activated, and the pressure was extremely strong. When the two forces collided, the people standing at the side would bear the brunt of it. Rong Xiu didn't have much cultivation, and his body was weak. How could he withstand such a crushing force? If anything happened to Rong Xiu, they wouldn't be able to explain it to His Majesty. However, Rong Xiu didn't seem to hear anything and only looked up at the 7th level of Jiuyou Tower. Rong Xiu! Elder Wei Yun shouted again, but Rong Xiu still didn't respond. He couldn't help but become more anxious. When he turned back, the black karmic fire had already completely surrounded the 1st level of Jiuyou Tower, and the door was completely sealed. What was even more worrying was that it didn't have any intention of stopping and was spreading toward the 2nd level. The scorching flames had already started to ignite the surroundings. The air was so hot that it could almost burn people. Elder Wei Yun was burning with anxiety. He had to control this fire as soon as possible. Otherwise, once it spread, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yan Qing. Take him away quickly. Elder Wei Yun had no choice but to shout at Yan Qing. Yan Qing looked up, glanced at Elder Wei Yun, and shook his head firmly. Elder Wei Yun, please forgive me. Yan Qing has always been obedient to His Highness. Since His Highness wanted to stay here, he naturally had to follow. Even if he knew that it was very dangerous, he had no other choice. Because that person was in even more danger now. If anything happened to Chu Luiwei, Yan Qing didn't dare to imagine what his master would do. Elder Wei Yun couldn't help but curse in his heart when he saw that the master and servant didn't listen to him at all. These two fools. Everyone else had already left. Were they really going to stay here and wait for death? Boom! A ball of black karmic fire suddenly rose. It actually shot straight up to the 3rd level. Elder Wei Yun wasn't paying attention and was hit by the blast. He lost his balance and took a few steps back. Screech. The fiend's screech sounded again. Everyone's mind was shaken. The entire school seemed to be enveloped in this fierce and shrill screech. Elder Wei Yun's blood was in turmoil, and he almost spat out blood. He looked up at Jianghu Tower in shock. What kind of fiend was suppressed in there? It was actually so powerful. It was just a screech, but it actually had such a frightening aura. At the same time, even the students and teachers who had retreated far away were somewhat affected. They widened their eyes in shock as they looked at Jianghu Tower. Their hearts were in turmoil. Gosh, Jianghu Tower is actually burning. What exactly is going on? Old Sun and the rest actually activated the Locking Heaven formation? This is the first time in 1,000 years, right? Weren't the few of you still cultivating in Jianghu Tower previously? Do you know what exactly is going on? How would we know? Everything was fine before. Suddenly, there was a huge force that chased us out. We didn't even have time to react. Luckily, you all came out. If you were still inside, I'm afraid. Wait. I just heard from Elder Wei Yun that Chu Luiwei seems to still be inside. What? Then isn't she? Everyone looked at each other and fell silent. Chu Luiwei is most likely doomed this time. On the other side, Elder Wei Yun finally caught his breath. Suddenly, he saw a tall figure striding toward Jianghu Tower. He was shocked. Rong Xiu. Stop right there. However, Rong Xiu didn't stop and continued forward without hesitation. In an instant, the black karmic fire enveloped him and swallowed him. Digression. I'm staying at my friend's house. She's still sleeping, and I'm sitting on the bay window quietly typing. I think it's better to read it at night. Updates will drop from time to time. I'm in debt again and again. Too much debt is no burden. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.